Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined as always by Matt and Shad. Gentlemen, are you in Arctic hell like I'm in currently?
I am in
It,
the icy grip of the demon cold right now.
I think the real feel here is 2 degrees and dropping.
oh wow.
I know
I,
Justin's laughing at us because that's like Canadian summer for him.
yeah, it's 30 degrees right now. Um, but it was cold. It was cold today. We got as high as like 34, 35. Felt colder, and I think the next few days it's supposed to warm up. I think Friday, and by warm I mean like Friday, Saturday. It's gonna be like a high of like in the mid 40s, mid to low 40s. But I'll take that because looking at the weather, it looks like starting next Monday, it's gonna drop down to like the 20s
Yeah,
as the
yeah.
high.
I would
Although
be.
it looks like it's gonna be a little bit warmer towards the end of the month. I don't know. I'm already sick of the cold.
Yeah,
Already
me
tired.
too.
All these people who in the summer are like, oh, I'm so tired of summer. I can't wait for the snow. It's like, I don't. Shut up. Because you
I
don't
had
have to carve your. You don't have to, like, liberate your car from an icy tomb in order to drive it in a hot
I,
day.
yeah, the snow has melted kind of off the roads enough, but there's still snow everywhere here. When we got like my area, like my neighborhood, probably maybe it got up to like 8 inches. But then like over like Friday night, it snowed like another like 1 or 2 inches, which wasn't
Mhm.
much, but it's like great. And it's been too cold and not sunny enough for it to really melt. So I
Yeah.
look, I don't want snow, but I probably would have been one of those. I'm tired of the heat. I was one of those people because they had the heat dome, so there was like July was like an entirely a month of about 100-degree days every day, and for like 30 days that got old. I'm like, this is I didn't I live in the DC area, like Northern Virginia. I don't live in Phoenix, Arizona. Like I don't want 100-degree weather every day.
Do you
I
get
didn't sign
that?
up for
Yeah.
that.
Do you get that muggy like water humidity in the summer since you're closer to the
Yes,
ocean?
Yeah. You got.
yeah. It's not it's not it's not bad like for months on end, but in like July, August mostly it gets pretty muggy where it could, depending upon the humidity, if it's real bad humidity,
Mhm.
then it could not even be that hot. It could be like 75, 80 degrees, but you walk a block and then you come back and you're drenched in sweat. And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah,
It's not even
because
that
it's so
hot.
I
It's
humid.
like,
I
yeah, it's
had
so humid.
I had a job once where people came for the summer that were from the desert, and they never like had not been in the desert. And one of the guys like, so what's humidity like? And someone described like, no, that's really not like. Just imagine you open the door and someone punched you right in the face. That's humidity.
That
I
the most. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
I can deal with that. I can deal with heat. I can deal with humidity. I got a thyroid issue. I am cold sensitive. I hate this. My
Oh
front
yeah.
steps refreeze every night, which means going to work or taking my kids to school is treacherous. I am sick of this. I am
Mm.
done.
I could do a good
Give
dry
me
heat.
spring now.
Give me like 110 in like a desert. I'm okay with that. But like humidity, I don't like, especially when I can't breathe in it.
The the most humid place that I've ever been to is my wife and I. At this point, 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, we did our honeymoon in Vietnam and Thailand. Vietnam, because I mean it's close to the equator. It was the most humid. It's jungle. I mean, a lot of it's
Yeah, yeah.
obviously the city is not, but it's essentially it's like a jungle nation,
Hmm.
Yeah, I've been in
and
rainforest.
it was incredibly humid. Like the first hour was like getting there, and our after like getting off the airplane and taking like a taxi ride, our first place we were starting is Hanoi, which is like it's like in the north too. It's not even, or in the middle of the country. I forget exactly where, but it's not even like it wasn't even that far south. But it was so hot and humid that like literally like clothes we just drenched in sweat. We
Dick
literally had
to
to
you.
stop. We first got there. We got a little acclimated. We first got there. We literally probably went a block or two, and it's like, let's stop. It was like Phoenix, where it's like, let's go in there and get water. We had to get a bottle of water every like probably like 30 minutes.
It's
Yeah.
We were just
well, like in
sweating
a
out.
rainforest, it's like you can feel it, like how it hangs in like a rainforest. Like it's really different.
Yeah, it's almost like a blanket.
It like yeah,
almost.
like it gets stuck under there. It's really rough.
If-
Sometimes.
Yeah, there comes a point in humidity when even I tap out, and I'm just like, this is no. It is just frankly, it is so hot and too hard to breathe that I'm
I remember
done mowing the lawn or whatever.
in my warehouse days, there was a day once where it was so humid, and I go in, and it's like I'd been there like an hour, like, oh my gosh, like my deodorant just melted off of me and I stink. So I on my lunch break, I went and drove to Walmart and got a new stick of deodorant.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I don't. Well, I think the problem is like I usually get Right Guard, and I think I had a different brand. I don't remember what the other brand was though.
It's like the Top Gear episode when they're in Vietnam, and they go to the shop, and Jeremy Clarkson's like, he gets spray deodorant and sprays a whole can under one arm, and then buys another for the other arm.
Oh, I've
It's
been.
like I know, yeah.
Have either of you ever done like Bikram yoga? That's really
No.
not that I've done a lot of Bikram yoga. Okay, that's
I'm-
where you do yoga, but you do it in like 100+ degree.
Oh, the hot yoga thing.
No.
The hot yoga, yeah. It's like they crank the thermostat up. I've done a time or two, and that's basically like how it was in Vietnam. It's like just you're basically you're existing inside of Bikram yoga studio, and you just had to get comfortable being like a kind of a layer of sweat and grime on you until you got back to at the end of the day after doing touristy stuff. You get back to your hotel, and it's like, all right, now I can shower and I can feel comfortable inside this air conditioned room.
I don't.
Would you?
That does not sound like fun. I do not want to smell other people's.
It was
stink.
actually a lot of fun. I
No.
don't know how
you
many.
get one of the plastic knives from the lobby, and you're scraping it off of you before you shower.
That's like when you used to go to the gym and you go in the sauna and it just is old man like stink.
Nope.
Old man,
No.
like it just reeks of old man ball sweat. Like that's just what I think of.
Ugh.
So
Anyway,
we
yes.
we have
This
a
blasted
plethora.
cold.
We have a plethora of topics tonight. So,
Plethora.
would you gentlemen like to do the WWE or the AEW mini topic? These are kind of continuations of last week in their own certain way.
We'll start with the WWE one, I guess.
Okay, so we're not big WWE watchers. We don't shy away from that. So they didn't really get much in our awards show last week, but it was kind of something I was thinking about. Just thinking back on 2024 and the bits of WWE I did watch. But if we were to give an MVP for WWE in 2024, I was kind of thinking Gunther would be the WWE MVP as far as like what I've watched goes, because the only thing that could really catch my interest, and he did catch my interest a decent amount in 2024, was Gunther. And I would say that was the only time like Cody's title reign kind of worked, was when he had the Gunther match.
He, in terms of actually work rate, probably, he probably would qualify.
And I would say he had like was that the Bret Hart segment? He had like segments and promos he had are the only things I saw really like break through last year too.
Was that the one where he said that Bret Hart was his second favorite wrestler?
Yes, that was the one.
After Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Although on and this is probably just a social media creation, and it hasn't like gotten legs, but there are people who I've seen argue, and it's like, are you being like disingenuous or being honest? Like, but there are people who are like, now that he's like that Gunther has been world champion for a while, they basically been shitting on him. It's like, oh, this guy's terrible. Like, why is he this? And I don't know. It's one of those situations where it's like, I don't know if you're just joking or being like deliberately like, you know,
if it's on
controversial.
social media,
But-
I would say they're disingenuous fucks. Like it whether
I don't know though. That's the problem, is there are a lot of, I'm sorry, very low intelligent WWE fans. So I can absolutely see that some of them being like, why is it on Gunther? It should be on a guy with like aura, like Jey Uso. And
I
it's like,
found though that
and
other
they
than
want that. They do want that. They
That-
don't care about the wrestling. They don't care that Gunther is actually like a better wrestler and better across the board by an exponential level than Jey Uso. Jey Uso comes out and says yeet and dances, and people like lose their minds. So they want that. They don't care about the wrestling. They just want the entrance.
I think the problem though is
and the vibes.
I think that the issue is though when you look at social media, especially for outside of a couple of accounts, even people I disagree with, like I don't know how you pronounce like Ibu. I think like his criticisms of WWE lately have been pretty fair and coming from a place of like, and
also known as backup Hangman.
Yeah. But like
he started off as backup Hangman before he like showed his face and.
But like I tend to find Reddit Squared Circle, well any Reddit in general and social media tend to be the lowest common denominator, and Reddit especially is the dumbest of motherfuckers.
Reddit across the board is bad.
Reddit is like cuck central for defending like everything and anything bad a company does.
So you will find it kind of varies by thread, because some threads will be all of one thing and then another thread will be an entirely different wave. But the biggest problem that comes up is whenever some jerk off rolls into a thread that doesn't have anything to do with it and then makes it a tribal thing. And I'm just like, I don't engage, I don't care, but the reason that I keep using it is because frankly it's the easiest place to find news rundowns, because people so in a rush for for clout go and post stuff there, and it's like, oh well, I can find everything in one place. And yes, Vectron, that's a good line. I can find everything in one place, and it's easy that way. But you can see like clips of match finishes or something like that, and it's like, okay, that's cool.
We should do a show on it though, because what I find increasingly difficult about Twitter and Reddit is I know people call it a conspiracy theory, but I kind of think it's becoming more and more true. But Twitter and Reddit have really started to show me that dead internet theory is actually true, because when you go on those sites, like a vast majority of what you see is paid shills and bots. Especially,
yeah, that happens a lot.
And there's really an interesting, if you want interesting, it's political, and the Federalist has a conservative bent, but they did this whole expose on how astroturfed Reddit was for the election, and they named names, and had receipts, and it was kind of funny to read that article and then go into like our politics and see those actual people trying to like
refute it.
Yep. But if you really want to see though how astroturf Reddit is, it's a really interesting article.
So what I was going to say, back on the main topic, is I think MVP is going to depend on the lens you're looking at it through. Because if, like for the taste that the three of us share, yes, Gunther is probably the MVP. But I'm, they're not that show. They're not making for me. That's not. So what I think the company would say, and I think it might be fair, is because they're more on presentation. They're more on everything that's not wrestling in the ring. Gunther may be like a very high profile, super consistent position player for them. I think they would call Cody their MVP, and honestly, I couldn't disagree with them on that.
See, now where I will push back on you a little bit though is there are years where they would name an MVP that is just like completely wrong, because like was it 2021? What year did Sammy do the Johnny Knoxville thing? Was that 2021?
That was post-COVID, so that may have been 22.
Okay, 22, you're right. 22. Yeah, because 23 was his match with Roman. So he would have done the Knoxville match in 22. Okay, so for the year of 22, they would have said something stupid like Roman, because that's what they would say. But if you actually look at what of their stuff got any sort of penetration beyond wrestling that year, was all Sammy stuff.
Mm.
And so, like, objectively, Sammy would have been their MVP, but WWE would be like, oh, Roman, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, no, but, you got all this mainstream stuff because of what he did with Johnny Knoxville
I
and stuff like
Brad,
that.
some of what you just said right there, I think will play into like our main topic because I have some thoughts on kind of that about breaking into the mainstream and all that. But yeah, well,
Yeah.
uh, Shad, I think that you have a point. They would say it was Cody, but they almost have to say that because they have presented or want to present him as the ace of the company. Like he's the top star of the company. And I would argue that we've talked about this. We've mentioned this on the podcast. I feel like I completely, or at least like amongst us, we've discussed it. Like I completely disagree with people like Dave Meltzer, who takes the promotion being hot and being like, oh, like Cody is on the same level as essentially like John Cena or some of these other people because like look how much money they're making and everything. And it's like, it's not Cody. I no offense to Cody. Cody is not.
No, let's put it out
Cena
there.
level.
Let's put it out
He's
there.
not
We're
Cena level in terms of popularity about the tickets he's sold. They're not. The brand is hot. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not
well, let's
doing
put
10,000 to 12,000 seats for every show they do because of Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, and we
but
are
they have to say that.
We are a pro Cody show, just to give context that we're not just crapping on for the sake of it. But like, I think to go with your point though, if you put Cody on a show tomorrow that he's not advertised on, he might draw some more fans to that show. But like Cody's probably not going to make or break your show. Like if you're pulling 7,000, like you put Cody on there, you might get like 8,000 or 8,500. Now, if that show is 7,000 people right now, and you put John Cena on it, it'll be 10,000 by
you're
by
jumping
Friday.
to 10.
I would also argue, and this was the fault of the WWE and how they built him, and we've talked about this on the show. It affects Cody, but it's like Cody is supposed to be the big star, and yet he still, to me, seems like he's option B compared to Roman.
He's
And
stuck in that
to use
bloodline orbit.
to sell your ticket argument, it's like you have a 7,000 seat show. Who's gonna get you more votes? More seats sold, more tickets sold. Is it going to be Cody or Roman? Like if you announce
that's
Cody,
a tough one because...
you're right. No, I think I would agree with you. Cena, yeah, you'll hit 10,000, 12,000 maybe. Who knows? Especially if you're going to actually be like Cena's going to have a match, not Cena's just going to appear to do like a 5-minute promo in the ring. It's like, no. If you're like Cena's answering a challenge from, I don't know, Solo Sakai or somebody like that.
You don't even have to be that good. It could just be like Cena's wrestling a hobo we got off the street. You're probably going to still put 2,000 tickets in there.
Well, in my scenario, if you want to go from like 7,000 to 12,000, like give him an actual match. If you want to, if it's going to be like come see Cena face Karrion Kross, it's like people are going to be like,
no,
okay.
but I'm saying though, if I'm saying like what you're saying is true. If you said like John Cena in a big match, you're going to get like 5,000. But I'm saying like you have 7,000, you just say, hey, John Cena is going to wrestle here, you're going to have 10,000. Like it doesn't. Yeah. That part really doesn't matter. Now, to your question about Roman versus Cody, I think that's interesting because, as far as ticket sales, Roman's really never made a difference, good or bad.
See, I would disagree.
I'm just saying historically, like
only narrowly,
even ratings wise, he doesn't like necessarily pop ratings. I don't necessarily think Cody does. I would also
disagree, but narrowly.
I don't think Cody necessarily does either, but
my take would be if you have in this hypothetical of 7,000 seats sold and you want more, if you announce Cody on your show, you could get maybe 9,000. If you announce Roman, you get maybe 10,000 because Roman is the bigger star, and that's what they've done where he feels like the bigger star. They view him more as the bigger star. I have a lot of issues with that, not the least of which it's completely manufactured. and it worked. So people would be like, so what? But I guess again, if you care about wrestling in an art form, like it bothers me that it's so. This is just I think something that bothers me with WWE in general, where it's like it's so completely manufactured. And if you are actually appreciative of the art form, you should question it more and you should demand more than just like, well, I mean, you can only like Jedi mind trick people so long, or they said how it should be. Like the people involved should actually be of a certain level of talent or quality. And I would exponentially say that Cody, who is nowhere near the league of people like Omega or Osprey, or even people like Swerve or something, but Cody is a much, 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 much better worker than Roman. So you should buy Cody more.
I would say
He's more of your white meat baby face. He has more of the total package than Roman ever did.
he's more well, and I think the difference between Cody and Roman, and it's a very we talked about this before, but like you can send Cody on like talk shows and stuff, and I think he's going to be a fun guest, and like someone that doesn't know Cody is going to like come away with that and stuff. But I think the problem with Roman is I wouldn't do that with Roman because I don't think he'd be that interesting necessarily. But I also think the problem is the more you put Roman out there, I think it hurts him because I don't have a lot of. I mean, I've said positive things about Romans. I think he has his positive and his negatives, but I think the one thing Roman does have is his mystique. But the problem is if you start sending him to talk shows and stuff, I think you start chipping away at that mystique because I think part of the problem with Roman is like so the Roman mystique, like with Cody, it's like he could make what he eats for breakfast like interesting probably because he's got
he can smile, crack some jokes about it,
but like,
and make it an engaging conversation.
But like, if Roman told you what he has for breakfast, like, it kind of kills his character because it's like, well, I don't care. Like, that's not like the Roman character. Because it's kind of like it's kind of like
wasn't there Brad? Hang on, wasn't there a Paul Heyman statement that they said that's why they didn't send Roman to it is because they didn't want to kill his aura, and it's like
yeah.
And on one hand, okay, but then on the other hand, Roman didn't go because number one, he's a heel, and number two, he didn't want to do it.
I mean,
I cannot remember any instance of him doing press or something like that.
No, and I don't think that's necessarily his strength either. But like I said, I do agree on the aura thing because I think the more insight you would get into Roman, like the human being, I think the more it would hurt the character.
Yeah. Sorry, Chad. I had one more thing to say. Like, when I was slightly disagreeing with you, Brad, I do think Roman is a draw, but it's comparative. Like, in that scenario I just said, maybe Roman is going to get you a couple thousand more tickets sold. And in terms of, like, ratings, if it's like let's say, well, I mean, we've seen this where it's like Roman, the Bloodline, it used to be on SmackDown. But then they started appearing on Raw, where they would announce like, oh, their Bloodline's going to appear on Raw. So it may be good for drawing another 100,000 to 200,000, 300,000 viewers. So that Raw, instead of getting like a 1.7, now it's getting like a 1.9 or something like that. Back when it was on USA, like maybe that was that, but it's not. It's nowhere near the old days where it's like John Cena. It's like, oh, you're gonna. Well, the WWE has declined tremendously, but you would.
Let's be more honest. Wrestling. Wrestling has declined tremendously.
Yeah, but if you put Cena on a show and it's like instead of getting like a 1.8 for Raw, normally a Cena would get you like 2.5 or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
and even he doesn't have the same bump anymore too because nothing does.
No. And even Cena. It's been a lot of diminishing returns for a while. Like at least since Austin Rock in late '90s, it's been a decline. Like Cena was big star.
For as much as we shit on the aughts and say it sucked, like they did decline in the aughts, but they were pretty stable up until like about 2015 is where it really kind of went off the cliff because even as late as like 2015, if you did like a special Raw, you could still pull like 5 million people pretty consistently.
What I was going to go back to for the back on the Cody versus Roman argument is, and I can't base this off of anything more than just kind of my perception, finger in the air to see which way the wind blows kind of thing. I swear I think the bloom is coming off the rose on the Roman thing. I think the general public or the general viewing audience, the general WWE universe, whatever, is kind of finally getting sick of it.
I think the
And
problem there is I agree with you. Okay, I agree with you. But I think the problem there might not necessarily be Roman. I think it might be the bloodline stuff. Like I think if you moved Roman on to something different, like if they went full tilt into like Roman CM Punk and kind of took the bloodline out of it, I think people would be more invested in Roman because he's doing something different.
well, and Cody was stuck in the black hole around the bloodline storyline for entirely too long, but he is doing other stuff. The Sunday night main event angle with Kevin Owens, like people were talking about, and so Cody is doing other stuff, and I think he's engaging them far more. Number one, because he's doing things he hasn't done before, and he's doing them in a different way, and it's a face champion you can get behind, as opposed to the slow as molasses, claims he's dominant, but can't fight his way out of a paper bag without people helping him kind of storyline. And so it's like, and to compare that, where's Gunther at? Gunther has the secondary world title, because that's what it is, and he's doing what he's been doing, which works, but by holding the secondary title, because they're sure as heck not going to put the main title on anybody else right now, he is going to be perceived as less than, which is why I referred to him as a very consistent position player.
Yeah. I have a question on the Roman front for both of you though. So let's say you take what Roman's been doing, and let's say you just shuffle Solo out of that and replace him with Tama Tonga. Do you think it would be more interesting to have a more well-rounded, like charismatic performer on the other end from Roman than Solo?
Would it help?
Yeah, would it be
Yeah.
better than it? If you had Roman versus Tama Tonga was like the main feud instead of Roman versus Solo, would it be better? And do you think
And
people would be more interested?
Work rate wise, even though Tama Tonga is not
Old
what
and
he was
limited.
even
Yeah.
yeah, not what he was even five years ago. Notice he didn't say Tonga Loa, but
Been
I
giving
mean
up on
the
that
real
one.
I think he's still. I don't think he is as good as people say he is, or he still has issues, and he seems like he probably maybe has some character flaws.
Are we talking
or
about? Are we
pretty
talking
issues.
about Brett Favre a charity?
No, yeah, but Jacob Fatu is probably the better option of all of them, just because he's
Well,
probably the best worker of all of
I
them and has the most aura. But
I think it was
he's also.
interesting.
I don't think he's been around for years, and I still think he's kind of green as hell. But in some respects.
I think it's funny though that they signed him and then immediately they were like, "Oh shit, he's outshining Solo in every way possible. What do we do?"
Look, man, that's not hard.
No.
Okay, Solo just didn't. Solo was the silent enforcer for so long, who didn't really do a whole lot, and now they're like, now you're front and center, and I'm like,
They rushed him too.
Look,
if you look at
from
how
where
long he
I'm
was
sitting, this is like narratively okay. That makes sense. The enforcer, the guy who was actually holding it together, is taking over. Sure, but Solo is just, man. I don't know. He ain't got it.
Mm-mm.
Look,
And
this is an example of what I'm talking about, where it's manufactured. And I know that there are many people, including people who have been in the industry probably for like 20, 30 years, who would want to take a baseball bat to me being like, shut the fuck up. Like, of course, this manufactures so much of everything, and wrestling is manufactured. But I would also say, or has been for years and years, and there are plenty of people who became big stars who were manufactured. And it's like, that's partly true, but it's also not, because the guys who really are just like the shits, like even if you manufacture them and hype them up. They don't last. They don't sustain. Like, even we talked about him because he not that long ago, God rest his soul, he passed away. But was Psycho Sid ever really that good in the ring? Like, no. Like, the best Sid match I've ever seen has probably been like okay or decent.
That
But
I
the dude had
I would say
the dude.
that Doctor Death match from UWF surprisingly
Yeah.
was almost good. Like, it was probably better than decent. And I mean, I was impressed that they literally broke part of the ring and worked around it. But I mean,
Yeah.
even that though, he is trying to get a bigger contract, so he was trying. Yeah. But I mean,
but he was never really that good, but he had a look, and he had like some sort of ungodly weird charisma where he could just go out there and like look menacing, and you just bought into it, and he had an energy about him. And he had, again, if you want, I criticize it, where how everyone in the WWE, all the fans, everything are obsessed with vibes and aura.
Yeah.
But there are people who do have that, like, and that is part of wrestling, and there always kind of will be part of wrestling. I guess what I'm saying is I feel too many guys in the WWE, that's all they have, or that's all that their fans care about, to the point where it's like they will pop for the guys coming out their entrances, maybe them cutting a promo,
and they shut up because
when it comes down to them having a 10-minute match, like, these people's eyes glaze over, and it's like, my wife is almost where, like, she to the extent that she'll watch wrestling with me, she'll go to a show with me, whatever, but after like 5 minutes, she's like, I'm bored, like, they need to end this. And it's like, no, it's been she's like, no, like, I'm bored. They should only be like 5 minutes long.
But the problem is
but she's not a wrestling fan. She'll tell you, oh, I hate wrestling.
But that's the kind of fan
like,
that's the kind of fan they're cultivating and like playing to right now. And I think like that's where my concern with them is. When they downturn, I'm really concerned about them, because the way they've been booking the last year, especially the fan they're courting, I don't know who's going to be left when those fans go away, because that's going to be the fan that leaves, because they're cultivating this. They're pretty much just people that want soap opera without the wrestling. That seem to be like who they've really been kind of pulling lately. And
I mean, it unfortunately was, I guess, ahead of its time, because these are the type of people that, if Lucha Underground was like now, they'd probably the number that would skyrocket up to be the biggest promotion in North America, because that was so much like soap opera and narrative and cinema.
It oddly feels cinema. Yeah, this oddly feels somewhat Russo-esque, as in we're trying to grab people who aren't fans, and it's like, why? What are you going to do for your, look, we've said before, and I will say again, this is not a company for me. But I can't deal with a 3.5 hour show that had 30 minutes of in-ring action.
Can't.
Like, I just can't do it.
This is my thing with the 3 hour shows is TV should be no more than 2 hours. Pay-per-view, and this goes for any wrestling company. TV should be no more than 2 hours. A pay-per-view should be no more than 3 hours. And if it's something like WrestleMania, All Out, or Wrestle Kingdom, it can be 5 hours.
I think 5 is like a lot, pushing it.
No, I'm being really nice there, and letting them have
people bash. People bash Tony Khan for having like at least 4 hour shows, and they never seem to care. But they don't. Those same people who bitch about that never seem to bitch about how the WWE will have like a 4 hour pay-per-view, and they'll have 4 matches in 4 hours, and they're not hour-long matches.
I mean,
they're
I'll be the first to
maybe
admit,
20-minute matches.
I think there's been one bad AEW pay-per-view I've ever seen, but man, there are times where, because if you watch the pre-show, it's 5 hours, and there are just times I've watched them and I just am struggling for the last hour and a half of it. It's just too damn long. But
running shows, I think one of the things that happens, because I've been to 3 AEW shows now, and one of them was Ring of Honor, Collision, and Battle of the Belts. So it was a 5 hour show, right? Like I was sitting there in my seat for 5 hours. I was engaged the whole time, though.
Yeah,
Like
but they
I
do
was
stuff.
into it. They mix it up. They do stuff, and you have consistent stuff happening in the ring. If I was sitting there in my seat for 3 hours, and most of what happened, I'm either looking at a screen or it's someone standing in the ring talking, I would just be like, "Is there a broken guardrail I can drive my skull onto?" I would be livid.
Yeah, because the last time I went to Dynamite. It was an okay show, but it was when the Jericho Appreciation Society broke up. I was at that show.
Mm.
And that segment was like 10 minutes, and I was on the other side of the hard cam. It was only 10 minutes, which is better than like some like SmackDowns or Raws I've been to where they have you staring at a screen for 30 minutes. But it was probably like a good 10 minutes. But by the end of the 10 minutes, I'm like, I've been staring at the back of their heads for 10 minutes. Can we do something else? For the love of God, please.
But they capped it at 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that there's enough awareness there not to do that so people get bored. But
And like Ring of
Yeah, I
Honor
know.
shows back in the day, I know Matt's probably been, but those were 4 or 5 hours, and some of those would go to 1 a.m. and it's like 12 o'clock, and like
Oh.
the main event's coming out.
I-
You're just like, I'm done, guys. Like, please.
yeah,
I generally some of those were like the TV tapings, and it's like, well, let's tape a month of it's like
Oh, that's
I didn't go to those. The one I did go was, what was that, WrestleMania? Was it 34? It
Was it the
one in New
MSG
Orleans.
one? No.
No, it was well, the the one at MSG, which is that, let's be honest, it sold out at MSG, but it sold it out because it was done with New Japan, and they had like Omega, Bucks, and everything, or at least like people thought they were going to be there, the Bull Club and all that. But no, this was like the year before. I
Oh, is that where they
2018.
like let out at like 1 a.m. and people couldn't get taxis and stuff because all the services were over and
I think
everything?
it was 2018, because that was like, I think WrestleMania 34, which I believe was in New Orleans. I could be off a year, but I think
I
that's
think we
right.
talked
And that
about it on the
was
show,
at
too.
Lakefront. Yeah, it's at Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, which it's not New Orleans. That part of New Orleans is not. It's not like close to like the French Quarter, like a lot of the places that most of the wrestling shows were doing. And it's not like you walk out and then walk 100 feet and it's like a bunch of places. It's like kind of up north, not super far, but also it's like an industrial area, so it's like there's nothing around. And it got out at like 1 o'clock, and I remember I went with a friend of the show, Chris DiPetrillo, and a few other people from like the Observer group, and we got lucky in that when we got out, we were able to flag like an Uber and maybe even like an SUV or something. But there's probably like 5 of us in the car with the guy.
yeah.
But we got out, but people were probably there like at least, I would guess, at least another hour or two, just trying to get cabs or Ubers or something to get out of there. And it's like, there's no reason. Like, I love Okada. Like, why did you give me 30 minutes of like Okada versus Marty Scurll? Like, come on.
Because they
Like, I
ran
don't know.
over. They ran over time.
I didn't want that. I need it.
Didn't they do the classic fuck up on that one where they did like Cody and Kenny, and then they did like the world title match after that, and no one gave a shit because they
Yeah.
were there for
Yeah.
Cody and Kenny.
Well, let me see Marty Scurll like pretend to break Okada's like fingers.
Oh
Like,
God, I fucking hate that spot.
Great.
So, Brad, what was your other topic?
Okay,
before
so
we
this is kind
get
of a
into the main one?
continuation of last week. I figured it'd be fun because we'd be a little chippy about it. But so, and I saw some more kind of what's the word I want? I saw some more online commentary on it. So this is pretty much, and I have like, I wanted to say something after I go through the topic, but so the idea is like, has the Death Riders angle been a failure? And what I find interesting about that is, because it's like, I think what's interesting about the Death Riders is I think that's a legitimate failure from AEW, and the discourse online about the Death Riders is so much more balanced and like thoughtful than like any other AEW discourse. And I wonder if that's because it's like a true blue like failure of an angle, and so people actually are like have genuine like thoughts about why it failed.
I would need to know what you say by balance? Because the discourse I have seen on social media, at least by that like Twitter, has been so overwhelmingly negative to the point where they're I'm obviously more of an AEW fan, but this is coming partly from either AEW fans or just people in line who are not like they're not Fed fans. So if they're not specifically AEW fanboys, they at least appreciate AEW and they're fans of kind of non-WWE wrestling in general. So there when I say that, I mean if someone who's a hardcore Fed fan is like, yeah, Death Riders suck, the Eagles sucks, it's like listening to like the Yankees discuss like how the Boston Red Sox are doing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you clearly there's no impartiality here, so I'm not going to take your opinion.
I don't
Yeah.
see that.
Like not even just a grain of salt, like the entire shaker of salt is how.
I don't see that though, because I think the thing is with people like that, they don't actually watch the products, so they don't like know to criticize
Well,
it. So what I see is like what I see
yeah.
a lot of is like, you know, like I like AEW, but this angle ain't it, bro. That's a lot of like the kind of stuff I see. Or man, this angle
Okay.
sucks because this, and this. Like it comes
Because
across
I
more
see-
like genuinely the fan base does not like it than a lot of other
Okay.
stuff I see.
Okay, so I can appreciate what you're saying there because I've seen some people basically talk like they're at this point. I've seen some people just engage in hyperbole where it's like they are chicken littling to the point where they're like the company's dying. It's dying. It's gonna die any minute now because this angle is so bad, bro. And it's like, and partly it was really the worst day I've seen was actually a couple days ago on Sunday because I guess after this past collision, they announced for the upcoming collision, it's going to be like a 12-man tag where
Oh, that fucking
one side
tag.
it's like Death Riders teaming with the Learning Tree and Chris Jericho
That is
against
so like that
like
is
Hobbs and
so
Hobbs,
this is
the Outrunners.
So I that match is so fucking stupid, and that is exactly
It is a bad idea for a match.
that.
Yes.
That is exactly, and why I hate that is that's exactly the kind of crap the WWE did for so long, because it makes no sense for the Death Riders to team up with anyone that isn't the Death Riders, because that's runs
Yes.
completely counter to the idea of their gimmick. And it's why you don't do meta gimmicks like that, because you run into these problems. But that's the exact kind of crap the WWE was doing for years, where they would do those little things that didn't like make sense in the greater
Yeah, but
context of the
people were very, very, very pissed off and really like just dooming and glooming, like, oh, the company's dying, like all they do is push old guys like that. Unfortunately, that kind of narrative or talking point has rooted hole, and whether he's probably there is probably some grain of truth to it. I don't dislike him, but I'm also not gonna give him his flowers. But you mentioned him before, Backup Hangman, aka Ibu. I'm not sure how you pronounce it either. He's someone who, the thing that frustrates me about him is that he always talks about like he has sources. Like there are people he knows in WWE, there are people he knows in AEW, and he doesn't style himself as like Meltzer or Sean Ross Sapp as like a journalist, even though he now I think works in some respect for Fightful. I don't know if he not as necessarily as a journalist, but I think he at least like does like some of their podcast stuff or whatever. But point is, like, he alleges that there were wrestlers in both companies that know him and talk to him, and then I'm not saying that's not true.
No, because and I want to say before you go on there. So, if he is saying that, like, I'm just gonna be honest, like that's not a hard feat to accomplish. Like when I did a hockey podcast for a hockey team, like I had sources. I developed sources just from hanging around with inside the team. Like if any of us had pushed harder, as long as we've been in this fandom, like we could probably have sources in a company. I mean, we've had like, I mean, and I won't. It's not like a unknown source at this point, but we literally have had for a long time, and no one knew that I didn't tell people. Like we had insider knowledge on something that WWE freaked out about, and like was part of why NXT started hoarding talent. We knew why that happened when a lot of people didn't for years, because we knew Chris. and he was part of why that happened. So
Yeah.
like just from being like active in the community, we've had like insider, like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, people, there's some people that think that's like a big deal. It's like, no, if you've been in the community for 20 years, like, you just you have friends, they get places, they get into things. Like, it's pretty natural for someone probably like him that's been around, has a lot of connections and stuff, like to
Yeah.
get ins with wrestlers and all that.
So, and that's fine, that's true. But I guess just as an aside, like the thing that frustrates me about him is that he will drop. Well, to your point, also, he has a following and a sizable following. So there are wrestlers who may talk to him just because they have something they want to be shared, and not, they be saying that. So they'll leak information.
And wrestlers have the
Of course,
emotional
I think,
maturity of high school girls, so they
yeah.
love to air their dirty laundry through
I'll,
third parties.
he is an unabashed Punk fan, so I'm 100% sure that Punk like says stuff to him to get it out there, because Punk likes leak. Punk leaks worse than a rusty old ship. But,
and he's
it's
gotten
so obvious when he does too.
he's gotten real lazy
Yeah.
about it too. Like, because there's you can tell, I don't know what the booking is, but you can tell by things that have said that Punk is trying to build interest by leaking to internet personalities. And like, he used to be smarter about that, but it's like, this is just the Punk PR thing you're repeating.
Oh yeah. That's, Punk's gonna get an improvement and an extension to take over NXT, and it's like, no, you very obviously put that out there to try and drum up people to call for it, but that's not going to happen.
Or
WWE there's been internal discussion. There's been internal discussion that of Punk versus Roman at Mania, and it's like, that literally means nothing. That's someone sitting in the meeting going, so we thinking about doing Punk versus Roman at Mania, and all that has to happen is someone going, no, we ain't doing that. That doesn't make it untrue. But it's like, come on,
why
man.
do these stories only leak about like CM Punk too? Like, they're pretty tight-lipped about everything else. But also, remember the Turner one, like when they were like, oh, WWE might sign with Turner, and it's like, okay, yeah,
sure, that's gonna happen. Yeah, 100%. They took the meeting because they weren't going to be insulting and not take the meeting.
Well,
it makes sense to take the meeting.
Yeah.
Keep all options available to you.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be dumb not to.
Yeah.
But to finish my thought about Ibu or Ibu, I'm horrible with pronunciation.
Yeah, if he hears this, tell us how to pronounce it. Yeah,
it's not a sign of disrespect. It really isn't, because I'm bad. Unless I'm told, I mentioned this last week with like Japanese names. Like, unless I hear it, I will probably butcher it at some point.
Well, I don't know if he's American or not either. Like, he could be like French or something, so it could have like a different pronunciation.
Ibu?
Yeah,
I think he's from. I don't know if he was born there, but he's like African. I think I don't know if he was born there or just like of African descent, born in America. So it's an African name. But the thing that does frustrate me is like he has like sources, and he will sometimes share stuff that he said he's heard, which is fine. I mean, again, people who in the know, they will do that. The thing that frustrates me is that he's also like a fan, and will sometimes share his takes on AEW or WWE, whatever like that. And you mentioned before, like, he can be fair. I'm probably a little more critical of his takes than you might be, Brad, but he can be fair, like, where he's open, at least, like, he's not just a fanboy, like, I will criticize things from both companies or whatever. But the thing that frustrates me is sometimes he'll do a take and people will bash him for the take, because that's just, we've been around a long time, like all three of us, from the message boards. It's like, you throw out a take on the message boards and people will flame the shit out of you, like, what is this, and whatever. And you gotta get a tough skin.
Yeah.
But he's younger than us. He's probably like 30, maybe, I think. But he'll be like, he'll bristle a little at people like getting pissed off sometimes at his takes, and it's like, bro, you cannot be like, I have insider info because I'm friends with all these. Oh man, I couldn't get work done today because I had all these people from AEW texting me and calling me. And you can't like humble brag like that, and then throw out a take like, I don't think Okada's been that good, or like in the last year or something like that. And that was his take. I'm just giving like obviously like a salacious like example. and then be like, "Whoa, like can't believe you guys are being all mean to me," and it's like,
It's
come
the
on, like, you gotta
internet.
be a
It's Twitter.
You know what's funny
Like,
though?
that's going to happen.
He's not super thin skinned, but that's the thing that bugs me. Where like
It's
he'll throw out a take because he's a fan, and he has these takes, guys. We all do, and he'll bristle. It's like,
you know
I
what's
can't believe like people like. Yes, people will say that.
you know
People
what's
would
interesting
bash
about
for
him
this.
though? Because I think he's more of a WWE fan. And the thing is, when he hot takes, he bristles. But like when he says like the wrestling in WWE sucks, and he gets that pushback,
Yeah,
he'll be like, I don't care what all you motherfuckers says, this sucks. And like I think
yeah,
what I've noticed about him is the more it's like an actual belief versus him engagement farming, he sticks to his guns. The
mm,
more like it's actually like a
yeah,
true thought of his, like because like the WWE stuff, he doesn't back down when people get, and he gets a lot of crap for like the WWE stuff.
yeah.
So,
But to tie it all,
yeah,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
you got a point. Oh, well, I was trying to tie it back to the.
I was good. That's where I was
stuff.
going too. So go ahead.
Well, the reason I bring him up is that he did say something not that long ago. He postulated, and this is based on allegedly things he's heard from people in AEW, which again you can question whether it's true or not, but it does ring as true that Tony Khan has signed a bunch of ex WWE people or older talent, and old doesn't necessarily mean Chris Jericho, mid-50s. It could also mean John Moxley, who is pushing 40, but has been around in wrestling for 20 years and has been with AEW since the beginning.
Yeah.
That there's kind of an older group of talent who they are kind of just like set, and they want to work with mostly like with people they're familiar with, which is like each other. And to the extent that they may want to elevate younger people at all, it's maybe like a couple hand-picked people. And so they'll work with them, and it's questionable whether those guys really like gain anything from it, but okay, whatever. But maybe it's a handful of guys they want to push, but then it's like you have like 20, 30 guys who maybe want to get elevated too, and so they will grumble and be like, "When's my spot?" and get a little bit disgruntled. Now, that's part of that is the nature of wrestling. It's like you're always going to have, especially a company with like, we've been doing like the USWA watch through in '92. They have a small roster, except for guys they bring in. It's not like AEW and WWE. It's like we got 100 guys in the roster. Like obviously there are people who would be like they're not going to be featured, so they're going to get disgruntled. You're going to get some people be like, "Hey, bro, I grinded on the indies for like 10 years. I'm just cool, whatever." But I can see where some people are disgruntled, and I think that that's probably like a true take. To tie it back to the Death Riders, yeah, like Death Riders should not be teaming with Learning Tree, and I think that the angle, whether I would call it a failure or not, I don't know that I want to finally get the nail in the coffin where it's like it's a complete failure, but from where it started off hot, where Moxley and the Death Riders kill, basically on screen, Danielson.
Yeah.
And they seem like these are going to be like the dastardly heels, and then here we are, fast forward like 3 months, and they're in like a multi-man match teaming with the Learning Tree against the Outrunners and friends. And I like the Outrunners, but it's also like you're doing a multi-man tag match against like a meme team that's very popular, and I like them a lot. But if the whole concept is that you are trying to tear apart AEW because they're not what you think wrestling should be, and now you've gone from like 3 months to you're just like cartoon villains going up against an 80s throwback team, not even like an 80s throwback team like FDR, we're serious, but like a comedy team.
It'd be like
has really derailed.
It'd be like the NWO, like 3 months into the angle, having this big hyped up 12-man with like Public Enemy and friends.
Yeah,
I don't love the tag, but I can see some ways it might work. If you have this thing where the writers and the Learning Tree get over on the faces, and all of a sudden the writers just turn around and kick the shit out of the Learning Tree, and then peace out because they're like, ha, moron for trusting us. Like, okay, you can salvage something out of that. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe not. Um, the thing, yeah, like you said, the writers, it started off hot and it's stalled out, and I've been trying to figure out why. Like, why did this stall out in the way it has?
I think
And
can I offer
yeah,
a theory? Because I think for this kind of angle to remain hot, you need that light at the end of the tunnel that's obvious, which they don't have. Like if they had made it obvious pretty quick, like okay, Darby's gonna beat him or Orange is gonna beat him. We just have to get there, and it was obvious. I think the angle would work better. But now you're just kind of like, well, where are we going with this?
well, yeah, Darby having his unfortunately timed Himalayan excursion kind of because what happened all through the angle is the writers would do stuff and then Darby would show up and just go absolutely bonkers, right? Darby would wreck their truck. Darby would repel in and go ballistic. Like to me, it seemed like that's where they were going. But now with him out for a while, it's like, don't see it happening. So do I see a success coming out of this? I do. But to me, it sure as hell ain't having Adam Copeland being the one that stops it. For me, it is the writers are talking about like nobody here is hungry, nobody here wants to get after it, and then you gotta have somebody new step up and do it. Because if you have somebody old do it, it's like, because it's not the same. It's
Even if
not
you
the
had
same as
Paige
having
doing
Sting
it,
go after Hogan, right? It's what's that, Brad?
even if you had Paige like turn face to go after them, at least
Yeah,
like you have that. He would have that kind of like Sting swagger he did against the NWO, where he's like an AEW original, and he's kind of
yeah.
like synonymous with the company. And like he wouldn't be necessarily new, but that would be like the personification of AEW, like
You
coming
could
to
have a
the
redemption story that way.
yeah.
And or like okay, so they need an end game. It's an in this the thing needs to have like an actual narrative end, not just dropping the angle. Now, I don't think it'll happen, but given that when we're recording tomorrow night is the Maximum Carnage Hobbs versus Mox, and the build up for this, I have never seen Mox like sell for somebody since he's been in AEW. Having him come in and Mox kind of backs up, and here comes Cesaro, who's been, the utter hitman, and Hobbs just kills him, and then Mox hits him with a chair, and Hobbs is like, "The hell did you just do?" And Mox bails. Like, I don't remember Mox doing that for anybody else. So if they did this whole thing where tomorrow night Hobbs absolutely murders Moxley and the writers jump in and get it thrown out, all of a sudden we've got a light at the end of the tunnel. And now they're trying to stop Hobbs from coming. It's like, okay, we can get back on track this way.
They're
But
they have they. I think that this the smart move would be to do that, where Hobbs just destroying him, and
mhm,
then potentially it ends in like a DQ where they see that Moxley's in peril and gonna get taken out, so they jump him, and
mhm.
then you could build up Hobbs you can try and elevate him to the next level, because he's a guy who, like, he's been with AEW like a few years now and has been steadily improving, and he does have like something about him. Like, I will say this with high praise, because we've talked about him a lot on the show, and it's because of like the last year or two, the stuff we've seen with him. I am starting to get a little bit of like 91, 92, like Ron Simmons vibes from him, and that he's really building up where it's like you're in ring, it's pretty solid. You come off as a believable, like, badass. Like, obviously big dude can work though.
Yeah.
Can he work to like the level of like Omega Osprey? I mean, well, few people
No, you
can,
don't
but
need to.
No,
you're
but
really
you don't
questioning.
need
It's like,
to.
well, you're really questioning though. It's like, can this guy, in theory, could you put the title on this guy, and like he can be like, he can lead a 20-minute main event of your pay-per-view. It's like, I don't know quite on that level yet, but why not elevate him to like your next star, another big star in that pantheon,
Yeah, I would 100% do.
Um,
And you can have. I don't think AEW has ever had a monster baby face like that, like the big.
No, they
And
haven't.
by the way, with Hobbs,
kind a a little bit, I would say, for a brief point in time, maybe with Wardlow, but that didn't really sustain.
no, it didn't.
I
And
guess early
the
Moxley would kind of like he wouldn't have been like big, but he was kind of a monster
kind
badass
of
face.
scary. But I agree with you, Matt, that like similar thing, except for me, I think Hobbs comes off as more of a badass in the ring than Simmons did. Because like Simmons was the never say die babyface thing. Hobbs is like the I'm just straight up going to kill you.
I
His
think
spine busters are amazing. His power bombs,
How,
like he looks like he's going to break the ring driving you through it, and I love it.
I think you need to start having people wronged by the Death Riders coming to his aid too as you build up there. Like you need your Orange Cassidy's, like you need Hook to come out, kind of go by stuff, bring guys like that when Darby comes back, like have Darby help him. Like they don't need to have a counter stable, but you need like a network of guys that are on his side. Like
I'm-
kind of how like in WCW, you had Lex Luger, you had the Giant, you had DDP, the Steiners, Harlem Heat would chip in from time to time. Like you had a network of guys that would help each other.
The mad as hell and not going to take it anymore contingent.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so that kind of brings up another point where part of the reason why I do think that the angle hasn't worked is, and I don't want to go too far where the people like Dave Meltzer, where it's like he's a very special guy, he's Poochie, Will Ospreay. It's like Will Ospreay should be the champion, and if he's not the champion, he should always be fighting for the championship. It's like, can we cool it with him? But I do think that one criticism I've seen about the angle, which I agree with, is that you have a lot of guys who are like have been like either are top baby faces or have been in that realm, like Ospreay or Swerve, and or even like, I mean, he's kind of back to heel, but like MJF, or even like, not that I put him in this role, but I mean, like even Adam Cole has been built up a lot as like a top guy or a high level guy, and it's like you have them all doing stuff with each other, which it's like narratively, yes, maybe that all works, but it's also like if you're trying to also kind of co-present Death Riders as like your existential threat to the company of AEW,
Maybe act like it.
and to me, then it's like everyone should be like, no, like shit, like we got to get these guys, instead of like the guys that are squaring off with them are the conglomeration, which I'm sorry, like outside of like,
It's a
I know
mid card stable.
they've been presented well. It's the mid card stable outside of like Orange Cassidy, who has enough cachet and has been built up enough that you could, as they did, at Full Gear, like you can have him challenge or be in like challenge for the title or in that contention. Jay White like kind of is in the orbit, but only recently. It's like you need kind of like top guys. You can't have Death Riders be like, they're like the main heel stable, and then it's like, yeah, now they're gonna feud with Private Party. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, every week we have Private Party. Like, no, Private Party's gonna show up every 3 or 4 weeks, and it's like, no, like it. So I really feel like they've been hurt a lot by that. Like, you need top faces involved in this, and a couple top, like Orange Cassidy, kind of, yes. Darby Allin, kind of, but then it's also like, well, now it's in the classics. We need Darby Allin and the Continental Classic, and it's like, yeah, it's great. You're gonna have great matches and everything like that, but you're also like, if he's supposed to be the heart and soul of this, and really like trying to kind of make amends or get revenge on Danielson and everything. Like he's gonna just be like, oh, I gotta do this tournament over here, guys, for like a month. Like, well, I'll address this later. It's like, no. So it's kind of just meandered. It's petered out.
It needs a refocus.
I don't know what they're gonna. But the problem is, it's how many weeks? Maybe about 8 weeks, maybe less. I think 7 to 8 weeks, no more than 8 weeks until Revolution. And I thought that they were going to go Mox Darby at Revolution, and I thought, well, if this angle isn't working, but it'll be fine. Like, they got 7-8 weeks, they can just build Moxley Darby. It'll be like a year, roughly, since the retirement of Sting, which was the big Revolution match of last year, and you could crown Darby as champion. Like, you could have Darby like reach that next level, become champion. He's a guy who you don't need to, or probably even shouldn't have him be champion long. You could have like a year-long reign with Darby.
No,
You have him
I
hold the
thought
title.
I thought when MJF had his reign and they were doing the Four Pillars match, I had said if I was booking that, I would have had Darby upset MJF for the title a couple weeks before that match, and then do the Pillars match and have MJF win it back just to test run him as champion, and kind of gives people something unexpected. But I think Darby would work better as like a short-term champion.
I think that I would have done like have Darby win the Chaos of the Pillars match. MJF gets a rematch and then wins that one. But you don't want to kill the guy.
Yeah.
No, that would kill Darby. So
well,
no,
I was
that's a
thinking
bad
like
idea.
you do it that way, so he upsets him before the pay-per-view, and then because you have a more chaotic Four Pillars match,
you don't kill him.
Then MJF can do something dastardly or beat like Jungle Boy at the time.
Yeah. By the way, I loved that Four Pillars match. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
But I thought that's where they were going, and narratively that makes the most sense, right? And yet they basically just an injury angle with Darby, and then you hear, well, that's to write Darby off because he's going to spend the next like several weeks to months preparing for and climbing Mount Everest, which he wanted to do last year, and couldn't because he broke his foot. But now he's doing it this year, and it's like
it's months, I think, because you have to acclimate, and acclimating takes a month, I think.
Yeah, he's
so
training effectively
because you have to acclimate. You have to acclimate at least at 2 points. I think it's 3 points. I used to know. And you have to acclimate coming back down. That's the other problem. You don't just come back down. You have to acclimate back down too.
So let's say he's going to be gone conservatively. Let's say 3 months.
That's
what are you going to do?
May.
Are you going to be like, let's say starting mid-January, so mid-February, March, April. So what are you going to do? You're going to bring him back like mid-April or late April, quickly like fire him up again, and then do Double or Nothing against Moxley?
Well, the problem is though,
and then do it. I don't feel you can. Like, people are rejecting this angle, at least the fan base, to the level that
I've never seen
even
the
AEW. Even the people who are like the small minority of people who are like, let's let it play out. It's like I think it's a little too damaged. Like I'm not like, oh, it's just killing the company. Like let's not get engaged in hyperbole. Like it's
no, but it's not like working.
That.
It could.
It's not working.
It could kill the company though if they do this for the next 6 months and they don't get their shit together. It could kill the company. But like,
let's choose Double or Nothing. It's like I don't think you can run this another 4 months.
No.
I don't.
You need to. I don't even know if you can. I don't even know if you can get this to Revolution as it is right now.
I think you can because it's so short in time. But
but you have to remember though, like in wrestling terms, especially when something's not working, 2 months is an eternity, and like you can totally like go cold and
it is, but you gotta I feel like you can, because you can book it where it's like every week the Death Riders show up and they try and start some bullshit, and you have maybe some group of AEW people like run them off or something, and you don't do it where they just look like chumps, but you could be like, it's Claudio versus I don't know, Jay White, and Jay White maybe has the upper hand. So the Death Riders start doing some shit, and then all of a sudden like Private Party or whatever shows up, and they it's a brawl or something. You can do it in a way to kind of like make it seem like no one is chumps. Like the baby faces aren't chumps for just getting rolled by the Death Riders to return. But the Death Riders also aren't like the Death Riders seem like they're badasses until they start getting challenged, and then they have to beg off because they start to get outnumbered or whatever. But I don't think it's working. They can't do this in the 4 months. Not the fantasy book, because I know we don't try to do that. But since he was brought into kind of the storyline, and I roll my eyes at this just because, not that he shouldn't be at some point, but it kind of plays into the Meltzer very special guy fanboy nature of it. But since he was kind of brought into the storyline, maybe now is the point where you just pull the cord, and in the next 8 weeks you heat up Will Ospreay and you have him all of a sudden, to avenge Darby or whatever, be the face of the face team against the Death Riders, and have it be Ospreay Moxley at Revolution, crown Moxley in the Death Riders angle, and then from there, in the meanwhile, you heat up Omega. You push Omega as like the super talent that he is, because they've already said that they're building towards Omega Okada at All In Texas, which is in July. So that's 6 months away. So you have Omega, kind of being slowly built up. You could have Ospreay win the title in early March, and obviously you're going to have July Okada, Omega, but maybe you build towards Omega and Ospreay at All Out or Full Gear somewhere later in the year. You have Ospreay Omega 2. Like you easily could build towards all that this year, and that would keep obviously like the AEW diehards happy.
I think the problem is
and not continue with this Death Rider stuff.
So I have a long running curiosity that I wonder if they've been so in the doldrums because of Omega's injuries, and so I have a couple concerns on top of this. So one, Tony has not shown a great ability to deviate from what he's got set in stone. So I'm kind of worried that he's just going to like keep plugging along without like adjusting to what's going on, because I think this is they've had stuff that hasn't worked before. And, obviously they've lost the fan base over some time and gone cold. But this is the first time that I think something just has not landed for them. And I don't think they've handled it well. Like, I don't think they know quite what to do, because this is the first time I think something has just died with like 90% of the fan base. But the other thing I'm curious about, though, is I kind of wonder if you just need to rocket Kenny Omega back up to the top and get your top star back on top and just try and like start trying to heat things up with him on top. And maybe you need to start adjusting plans and maybe saying, fuck it, let's just see if this works, and like try to go with Omega as the champ again.
I feel I personally, like, there are people who obviously push that there, and that was kind of annoying too, where Omega had a couple weeks back, if that, not even 2 weeks back, but he had his match against Gabriel Kidd, his return from being a year on the shelf with diverticulitis that he actually had surgery in. And people like people don't know, like that basically was like a bowel resection. They had to cut out pieces of his intestine.
That took Brock out of the UFC.
Yeah.
So it ain't anything to mess with.
The fact that he could come back and give the performance that he did, it's like, yeah, this just adds to the argument that he is the greatest of all time. But
and the other thing with that match though is that, I mean, other than the announcer shit, that match had more buzz to it than anything the non-WWE's had in quite a while.
Well, and it got Meltzer to break out of his. Let's be realistic. He's been exceedingly pro WWE like for a long time, and people who don't think that he is don't understand him, or even like the very close.
They want him to conform.
Wrestling Observer fandom.
Well, they also want him to say, they want him to just be a parrot to say exactly what they say. So the thing is, he can be extremely pro WWE, but he doesn't conform 100% to what they think he should say. So obviously he's like an AEW shill or blah, blah, blah. And the same thing.
He occasionally
And the other thing is though, he gets it from other areas where he could be like super pro something like AEW, and he deviates the same way, and people like start hitting him with stuff. Like he can't
Yeah.
win, obviously, and like
Yeah.
a lot of times people get too hung up on things that are like just his star ratings. I know we talk about how his star ratings don't mean anything, but man, people get so butthurt about his ratings. It's like they're his ratings. Like, and honestly, like his first 6-star match was in 1989. And it's just like there are people that put way more thought into his star ratings than he does. And honestly, like I see Dave work. Sometimes Dave is just getting his jollies by pissing you guys off. Like, I'm sorry, he just does.
I don't know how. I don't know when he's necessarily doing that. Sometimes I can obviously tell.
Oh,
you can. Like
you can tell.
He made a comment on Twitter. He made a comment on Twitter the other day that it's like, oh, you clearly said this to rile up like the Jim Cornettes and his fan base.
There's days.
Like, they're gonna take. He compared somebody to Terry Funk.
Yeah.
And it's like, like a modern guy like Will Ospreay or something like somebody to Terry Funk.
It was who was it? But like no, he does it a lot because there are times you can tell by the time of day. It's like he'll say something that's like, you're going on lunch and you wanted entertainment for an hour, didn't you? Because there are times he'll throw something out and it's just like, Dave, you just wanted
chum with water.
Yeah, because Shatner does that a lot. He'll just throw something out and people get bent out of shape, and it's like he's just trolling you guys. Like,
yeah.
Because
I'm trying to remember who that was because I remember seeing that.
It wasn't Omega,
with the Terry
was
Funk thing too. I don't know. Maybe
I'll try to look real quick.
Was it Darby? No,
I don't think it was Darby. If you're going to course correct and you're not going to make a new star, then I'm going to say it needs to be Kenny to finish out the Death Rider angle, because it's just like, no, this company, I did not help start this company for someone, for someone to come in here and stomp all over it like that. And you want to see hungry, I'll show you hungry. What did I go through? And,
what?
And so
I think we posted it in the Discord if you're trying to like figure out a place.
Yeah, it was in there somewhere, but
I know I did it in our like group chat.
But
he was troll baiting on that one. It was obvious.
Yeah, this is just something that needs a satisfying narrative ending, and if it's not Omega, it needs to be somebody new. Make a new star because you're ready for it.
It was about Omega.
It was Omega? Okay.
They were talking about the Omega Gabriel Kidd match, and someone was like, "Oh, it's on like another level." Like Kenny did an all-time sell job, and Meltzer goes, "He was Terry Funk with more athleticism," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, you did that specifically to rile up some very specific people."
Yeah,
and you know it. Like I'm sure there are people who are just like tearing their hair out because God forbid this,
say something nice about Kenny Omega.
The thing is, with Meltzer, I've noticed so Meltzer does have a sense of humor, and I don't know if people do it intentionally or they just don't get him, but there's times where he's obviously joking and people take it like as literal fact. Because there's times
very dry.
Because there are times where if you listen to him and Alvarez talk, he'll say stuff and he'll get stuck on something, and he'll say something a certain way, like, "Oh, you're just doing this to piss off Brian, because you're doing this to like make his logical brain like freak out because you're like." You're intentionally stuck on this just to fuck with him. Like, he does that a lot. But that's why he and Brian work so well together. That's what they have a good rapport with each other. But yeah, like, there are times where people are like, he said this. I'm like, he's obviously kidding.
He's screwing with you.
Yeah.
This is inconsistent with, if nothing else, Meltzer is consistent with his opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is inconsistent with Dave Meltzer. So it's like, he's screwing with you. If for no other reason that you can tell.
I just think it's funny though with like modern day users, what I'd say is like the normie internet, is like seeing like old school people. Even Tony does it. Tony goes into message board Tony, as people call him, is what the flagship calls him. Yeah. Message board Tony gets so much mileage just doing like trolling 101. Because it's just funny like how people like the idea of like don't feed the trolls like is such a foreign concept to people now, because now the idea is like, no, you react to the trolls and you like highlight what the trolls are saying because that accomplishes something. It's just funny, like it's funny how the concepts of the old internet worked better, like don't share personal information,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that kind of went out the window too.
To bring it back though, I personally like the slower approach of like building Omega back up versus just like let's immediately put the title back on him. But this is something, Chad, that I'm sure like if they were to ever hear this discussion, people like Trish and Sarah would probably be like pulling their hair out, because at no point in this discussion, because I'm like, maybe they should belt up Ospreay, and Brad at least is like they should probably belt up Omega. No point of then like, maybe they should put the title on Hangman Page.
No,
We did say that. Yeah,
I said Hangman.
did?
I said you could conceivably turn Page face because he would have that.
I did hear that.
He would have that Sting element where he's an AEW original and would have that going for him. But
look,
did you guys
I get it.
Did you guys see the thing I dropped in the Discord where he?
Oh yeah,
he obviously he can appreciate. You can tell like when he's breaking the character. Because they showed him like from like the AEW like mobile game or something. It's like him, but it's like I guess.
Where's my mustache?
Different version. He's like, my mustache isn't thick there, and I'm wearing tight pants. I don't wear tight pants right now.
Yeah,
I don't like this.
That's not me anymore.
It's not me anymore.
Yeah,
like, he's clearly playing on his like I'm a darker, brooding version of Hangman Page.
So, in terms of Hangman, I am aggravated. They come back. They do this huge angle. He is this nasty, scary heel, and then he immediately starts getting jobbed out and doesn't get like interview or promo time until what, like this or on TV, I should say, until what, this past week. It's like that I don't like. I understand you got to rotate people in and out, but you just had this hot heel return, and now you're cooling it off.
But
it's like, what the hell is your problem?
Why didn't you do like more like what I thought was really great for him, and they should do more of, is like that little mini feud he had where he just trashed Jeff Jarrett for a couple of weeks, and it was just filler for him to like keep
murdering somebody.
Yeah, just a guy that's like a mid-carder that he's going to clearly beat, but has some credibility. It keeps him hot. Like I don't know why. And I thought the match was pretty decent. Like I don't know why you can't do more stuff like that. I mean, why not have him? Why not have him take on Kyle O'Reilly for a couple weeks? Like,
you have badass angry Hangman Page come back, and he does some filler stuff, and then it's like, oh, and he loses definitively to Jay White, and it's like, Jay White's really good, and I understand people have been waiting for a Jay White push, but you are cooling off this new hot heel to feed him to. It's like, I eagerly await the day we get face Hangman back, because I love face Hangman. You know, my special guys are Hangman and Orange Cassidy, although Hobbs may be getting into that space too. And so, could we? Sure, yeah, we absolutely could do that. This could be like the catalyst for the face turn.
Why not do something off the wall? Like, why not involve him with like Hook and do something like where maybe, like, you know, kind of maybe recreate the AJ Styles and Moxley feud where James Ellsworth was involved, and they would do stuff to cause
proxy war.
Yeah, and like have a proxy war with Paige and someone with Hook, and like have dastardly things where like Hook keeps beating both of them because they keep screwing with each other. Like that would actually work really well with this heel character, because he could just lose his shit every time it happens. Then Hook benefits from being involved with bigger names and getting some wins over them too.
I'm just in this place where it's like, okay, at least in terms of the writer stuff, let's decide what the end game is now and start working towards it. Because I think where they got lost is they started off, it was hot, and now they've just kind of been doing stuff that's kind of like what they had been doing at the beginning, but they don't have an end game in mind. Get to that end game. Know where you're going and start heading that direction, and then that way it'll pick up. But
So
I think we about talked that point to death.
yeah. So our main event topic this evening is how do I approach this? Okay, so we got the viewer numbers for Raw last week from Thurston, and they did 2.6 million people on Netflix live. Now, all the disclaimers on there. Um, it's Netflix, so people might not feel the need to watch it live as much. But I thought, like, I saw some of the ads for Raw, and I thought they did, like, a really good job of kind of selling it as, like, an event you should tune into live, blah, blah, blah. But I was really shocked at how few people watched it. I kind of thought that was really low because I thought I was even being super negative, and I told you guys beforehand, like, I think they'll get, like, 8 to 12 million people, and it'll go down after that. But I think 8 to 12 million. Because
I don't think
because they did
having it. I'm sorry, Brad. Finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say because they did. I did think they did a good job. Like the commercials, they did a really good job of hyping this as like an event.
Mm.
See, I think the issue with it being on Netflix is nobody. You don't have to care if it's live. You don't have to care because it's going to be there, and you can go back and watch it later. You're like, oh yeah, I'll go back and watch that later. And then what happens in a lot of cases is you just don't. So I don't know, man. It's like the reason that I'm down for AEW on Max is because it's simulcast, right? It is straight and it's it's good quality picture, it's a good feed, like it works. And with it being simulcast and then it's there, you can go back and rewatch it later if you want to.
People have said I haven't seen it. I DVR it, so I haven't seen it on Max. But from what I understand, people are saying that the video quality is better on Max.
Oh, it's like 1080 on Max. Like you can watch 1080 on Max, which I guess you could do on Triller, but I get if I understand what I've read and heard correctly, like if you were watching it on Sling, it was not good quality. It was just kind of simul and that sort of stuff.
So like when they first started airing it like a week or two ago on Max, I guess this wasn't the case. I think that they either have started or are going to. That on Max they will be removing the whatever commercials there were for network. You won't see the commercials, but the picture-in-picture stuff that you see the commercials, like they allegedly are going, they're going to keep that. Like they're going
to bring that back.
They're going to bring that back. So if you won't miss a certain amount of action that you would, like when they first started, like the very first week, it was like you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Which I mean, again, it maybe doesn't matter to you, but the whole point is like you would at least get a couple minutes of action while it's a commercial break.
I think
so
the difference
they
though,
at least
between...
had it. So they are like it's like a couple weeks in, they're learning already.
Yeah, they're
I
adjusting.
think the difference with AEW on Max though is it is simulcast, but I also don't think their numbers like say a lot because AEW is a more niche product. They do a good job of advertising on Max too, and Max is a much lower install base. The problem is like when WWE only gets 2.6 million, like that is more of a statement to where wrestling like as a whole is, and it's not good.
So
one more Max point I want to make real quick. I'm sorry, and then I'll shut up and let you talk.
No,
like
fine.
Raw got what 2.6, 2.8 million, whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Dynamite, their rating didn't change all that much.
Yeah,
but they don't have Max numbers, which seems to me like this is an improvement because maybe your ratings didn't change all that much. But then you can't take into account the new streaming thing you just launched. It logically to me, this seems like a good thing. This seems like
it implies that
plus.
The ratings for so far for Dynamite and for Collision do not seem to have changed appreciably. And by that I mean it's still getting like the same ratings. And I know WWE fans, like Fed fans, like or people who hate AEW, like love to crow about how like AEW isn't pulling the ratings it did a couple years ago, which is true.
Yeah.
But point is like they don't seem so far to have lost any viewers with the simulcast on Max. But you would also would then have to make the assumption that absolutely zero people. You don't have max numbers, but you have to assume like 0 people have watched it on max, which doesn't seem realistic because I've seen people say like, oh, I watched it on max. I've watched it on max, and not like everyone's like, oh yeah, we ditched cable to watch it on max. But point is, like, I've heard people talk about watching it on max, which means some amount of people are watching it. So then it would apply if the ratings haven't really dropped, and you have people talking about seeing on a max, then it must be that they are possibly growing their audience, or more people are now watching it. So,
or you've
and who knows,
gotten torrenters or like cord cut people watching it through alternate means are just watching it on max because they have they have non-cable access to it. So they like there could be a world where yes, they're getting more like legitimate viewers per week, but they just like found a way to get their pirates on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a win all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to make a point. Like, Raw did 2.6 million on Netflix. I guess you could tell it wasn't exactly great or what they probably wanted or expected.
Because they didn't tell you. It took them till Thursday to tell you. And usually
they did
when
initially. Yeah.
Usually when it's good, like for other stuff, like when Disney or Netflix has a really big hit, they're telling you about it like within a day or two of it like hitting streaming.
Yeah. They didn't talk about it initially, and then when they did, they hyped up like, oh, it got like 5 million worldwide or something, and it's like the fact that you're really hyping up the fact like, oh, total viewers worldwide. It's like,
Yeah.
You didn't do
Where's
what you
those
thought it was
fast
going to do.
nationals at now, guys?
Yeah.
But I mean,
But
I'm not
2.6.
I'm not even. This isn't even for me. It's not even a gloating thing about it. It's more like a concern of wow, like this is like an interest. It's like kind of like the comic book world for me. It's like wow, this like has really contracted a lot, and they're just not because we've talked about it before too. Like when people are hyping up, like hype up anytime like NXT and AEW or like going head to head, and like someone said it once and it's been true every time. It's like, so we're doing all this hype and they're really just going to be slapping each other for 1.5 million people at absolute max. And it's, to me, it's just like, wow, like wrestling has fallen so far that like the biggest promotion on like the biggest streaming platform, at most they were happy they got 5 million people to watch it.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2.6. And someone posted this, which I think it's relevant because they make obviously make a big 2.6, and it's like, well, yeah, if you're looking at Raw, what it was doing before it dropped from USWA, like it was getting like 1.6. So it's like, oh, you added like 1 million people for the first show where there's a lot of interest. You've hyped it up, and you're having like The Rock show up, and Undertaker, and like the stars of yesteryear. Let's see if it gets released. Let's see what the streams are or whatever for this week.
Oh,
like,
we'll have to go looking for it. But
I don't think there'll be more.
Nielsen will have it whether they want them to or not. Like we should be able to.
We'll see. So if it's 2.6 again or close to it, either way, plus or minus, okay. Yeah. But someone pointed out that a few years ago, it obviously went way down. But when SmackDown debuted on Fox network TV, its debut was like north of 3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it obviously declined a lot. And by the end, it was still doing like it was probably doing like 2.6 or maybe a little less than that.
I was doing like a bog standard crap episode. I think would do like 2.25. But if they really like, if it was Mania season or something, or they really hype something up, it might pop up to like a 2.5. Like I think they got like the air at like 2.8 for like something really like astounding, like here and there.
Point is, it was doing like the same amount that Raw did on Netflix, like right out the gate. Like it was maybe doing what it was doing towards the end, roughly, on SmackDown and Fox. And the point is, like SmackDown, like Fox shouted from the hilltops, anyone they could tell, like how disappointed they were and how they felt they were screwed over by the WWE because they promised a certain amount of ratings and didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And here is Netflix dropping like billions to the WWE for the streaming thing. And the end result was like domestically for the first one with all this hype and everything with some of the biggest stars in wrestling for the last like 20, 30 years. And you got basically what it was doing on Fox when it left.
Well,
SmackDown left.
I think
So I don't know that it's really like worth it.
Well, I'd be
People who act like,
interesting.
oh, it was a good number. It's like, was it? We'll see. Like, I don't know that it was good.
I think for Netflix, like all those like super hyped like Netflix shows online, like don't do like big numbers. So I think like in their ecosystem, like I bet it's towards the top of like what one of their shows probably does for like the first couple days. So I'm guessing they aren't super disappointed in that. But where I would be interested, what I'd really be interested in that we could never get, honestly, is what amount of their fan base did they leave behind by leaving terrestrial TV? Like
I was gonna say traditional cable, but yeah.
linear TV. But like, because like you would think like because before recently, like their fan base is older, but like how many like people like maybe that have watched it since like the 70s or 80s that are in like their 60s now really would go watch them on Netflix.
Having an older fan base, I would think hurt them on that front, and so it's like I understand why you did it because everybody wants to be doing streaming stuff now,
and they also it's one contract for all of their TV. Like they didn't have to go negotiate with all these other countries and networks. And stuff.
Right.
So like they probably
makes life easier.
Yeah, it saves them a lot of money. But I do wonder how like what percentage of their fan base maybe just are gone because they don't want to get Netflix. Maybe they're on a tight income and like Netflix is not a cheap service anymore.
Yeah, they can afford to have their cable. And there's other stuff on cable they watch when they're not going to give that up to get Netflix just to follow WWE.
And they still have SmackDown and NXT.
Yeah.
It does raise the question though, because we mentioned earlier, like what is the fan base they're cultivating? It does raise the question, like let's say, because the Netflix deal is I think like 5 years or 10 years or 20 years.
It's 10 years.
It's like, is it 10 years? I thought it was like they had the option at 5 years to like maybe opt out.
I think it's 10 years, but I don't see a world.
I think that there was an opt out after like 5.
I don't see a world.
So
let's
work with that hype.
I don't see a world where Netflix opts out though, because the one thing is we can talk about how those numbers are disappointing in our eyes and stuff. But the one thing I've noticed about streaming services is they throw money away on shit no one watches all the time. So I don't think Netflix would ever opt out, even if they are losing money on it because it's content. And you figure in 5 years, like if they keep it on there, like that's what is it like? That's like 260 Raws in 5 years, like of content on their service if they keep it.
Yeah.
52 times 5. So.
Yeah. No. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Your math.
So I mean, like
right.
for them,
Correct.
that's a massive amount of content for like 2 or 3 hour shows. So I think like I don't see a world where they necessarily say no. And I think well, I don't know. The streaming wars have been really weird because everyone got in on it and everyone kind of lost. But I think having a stable source of like unique content, I think is something that they would not necessarily opt out of either. Because like if it was me, I don't know if I'd opt out of Raw in 5 years because it's like, where are you going to replace that? What are you going to replace it with?
According to the New York Times, it's 10 years.
Okay. But even
I could have sworn that I saw like an opt out after less time than 10 years, but
I mean, would you? I don't necessarily think I would opt out, even if I was a little disappointed, because, like I said, where are you going to replace that on your service?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it depends if you're paying them like 500 million to $1 billion a year, and you're only getting like, let's say like 1.4 million streams a week, if that, then it's like you have to start doing math. It's like if you're paying like effectively 50 million a show or something silly, like is this really worth it? Like,
Yeah,
not getting that much in return. It's like, what could you replace it with? It's like, I don't know, like another Korean drama.
So
like,
let's see.
That's the thing. Oh, we got 2.6 million. It's like Squid Game season 2 has like 5 times that.
So
now,
if
granted,
you,
my wife and I just watched season 2. It's like it's a 7-episode season, so it's like people are gonna like us. We watched the 7 episodes over the course of like 3-4 days. So, and we're done with it.
So
if you drop more stuff,
if you have 500,000 people subscribing to you only for WWE, that's $7.5 million a month in subscriptions you're getting just from WWE. So that would be what, 90 million a year just from those subscribers if they stay subscribed. Then you have advertising, which they're going to whore that show out so hard, and Netflix is probably going to get cuts of that. So just from advertising and the subscription revenue, you're already kind of in the ballpark. And that's just at 500,000, which they probably won't even get that. But and then you're talking about content though, because the other thing is, because that's long, like let's say some nerd just decides, oh, I'm going to watch all of Raw from like this year when it's all said and done. That's 2 to 3 hours for 52 episodes. So then that goes in their tally where they start talking to advertisers and they can be like, we have this many hours of blah, 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 like streaming, hours watched. So like it does serve that purpose of you're just churning hours into your watch time, which you can then turn around and get advertisers to buy into.
That raises a question, because I didn't watch it. I didn't watch this week either. Did they have ads?
Yes.
During Raw?
Yes.
Or commercials?
Because people were bitching. People were bitching a massive storm about the ads last week.
They should. If I'm paying a lot of money for Netflix, which I do.
Oh no, all those services.
I should have 0 fucking ads.
All those services.
If you want to,
all those services are hitting you up for like an extra couple of bucks to get rid of ads now.
Oh no, like I have basically all of them. Like my wife and I just watched the latest season of Only Murders in the Building, and it was with ads. Like I pay money for Hulu, and
Hulu's
then I get.
Always had ads,
it's not. But it's not super annoying. It's like you watch like 10 minutes of the show, and it's like, here you hit with like a 1-minute ad. It's like, oh, okay, I'll sit through like 1 minute. It's not as bad as like even watching like regular TV, where it's like you're gonna get like 5 minutes of like commercials. But
Max and Prime are obnoxious with it, because on Max, like their algorithm's just straight up busted. So if you watch like 2 hours of stuff, you'll get like 6 sets of ads, but you might get the same ad like on every break.
Yeah, you see a lot of ad repeats.
Like when it was political season, like the Bernie Moreno, Sherrod Brown thing, I just got nailed with, like, literally I saw like every one of their commercials 60 times on Max, and it would just decide one day, it's like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to show you like Sherrod Brown stuff, and it'd be the same 3 Sherrod Brown commercials all day, and the next day it'd be like, oh, well, you're getting Bernie Moreno today. Same 3 Bernie Moreno ads over and over and over and over again. And like it was to a point by the week before the election, I could mute it and just, I could do the scary, like, Sherrod Brown wants to murder you in your sleep. Like,
just as a throwback reference, do you remember watching ECW on TNN and they had one commercial for every slot, the Monster Truck Madness?
Oh, I was thinking the video ones, like, watch like Kamana Wana Leia like strip naked on top of the
ECW arena.
They were ECW on TNN, and it would cut to commercial, and it was the Kevin Nash Monster Truck Madness commercial for every slot in every ad break.
No, they always do on Between the Sheets with Zollner and Bix. They always do the watch Kamana, like whatever her name is, dance
Wanna lay.
Yeah, dance on top of the ECW arena. That's gonna.
So,
I'm gonna be fucking.
You know
like,
what? You
I'm
know
gonna
what?
be like
If Raw,
riddled with
if
dementia in my old age, just like saying that over and
oh
over
yeah,
again.
if Raw is gonna have ads in this streaming era, then they should dig up the old audio, dig up the grave of Lord Alfred Hayes, and be like, promotional consideration paid for by the following,
They
and
probably have to.
then air their ad.
They probably have to pay someone for that.
Mm.
They should do what like they should figure something out like what Thursday Night Football does, because they do like special. It's actually ruined football for me. There's like this extra channel you can watch that has like advanced stats, and they like do all this like graphical stuff, and they like will predict which players are gonna like blitz, and they'll show you like the routes guys ran and stuff. And I'm like, I need this on every football game. Like, if they did something with that, if they figured something out with that for wrestling, it could be really cool. I wonder if you can like get to the Spanish commentary and stuff real easy on Netflix.
I don't know.
No, but yeah, they
But,
had ads because I saw a lot of people complaining about them.
so, Brad, you were kind of getting at the idea of, is wrestling becoming, how niche is it? I think is what you're trying to build towards, right?
Yeah, very. I think it's become like comic books. I think in a way where it's very niche, and wrestling is losing the ability to bring new people in or understanding like, because like what my big complaint about with Raw was is like if I was doing it like they were doing like WWE things like talking up front took too long to get to the ring, and it's like if I wanted to bring new people in, you got to hit them with the things like you only get from wrestling. Like you need the mayhem, you need the violence, you need the antisocial behavior, like to either weed them out so they know it's not for them, or be like, oh, I want more of this.
Hmm. So, one of the things that I thought, because you'd thrown this idea to us earlier, is that everything, almost everything, has kind of become niche now. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's very few broad spectrum appeal things anymore, because now we have, in terms of our entertainment, we have so many choices on stuff that you don't have to watch the same thing as everybody else, because you can choose whatever you want to do. I was watching there's a guy talking about the news in the fantasy book world, who and how it got to this point, I'm not exactly sure. But the most used streaming site in the world is an anime piracy site, and a lot of it's coming from the Western world, right? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's available now that wasn't in the past, and you don't have to watch the NFL because that's all anybody at work is talking about. NFL being a bad example, because that's one of the few things that's maintaining
Like
a lot of popularity.
the only thing. Well,
Yeah.
actually, funny fact. For as much as the NBA is falling apart, MLB is actually gaining, is actually picking up in popularity again because the changes they made to the game actually worked.
Yeah, yeah. The pitch clock. I'm like, whenever I first heard that, there were some people complaining about it. I'm like, no, I think that's a good thing.
You know,
Because how many times would you watch a baseball game and the pitcher's just standing there trying to play mind games all the time?
or you'd go to like a game because I have a minor league team near me. You'd go to a game and it'd be good in a good. You'd be going at a good clip, and then you get some reliever or the starter just as a slow worker, and they got to do all their crap, and it just takes them forever to pitch because that's their. Because some guys is like pitch quick and some guys don't, and they would just be like, oh my god, like we're never gonna leave this game because this guy will not throw the damn ball.
Yeah. So it's funny to me that that's happened. They made a good decision, which increased its popularity.
Well, and they got the game
Awesome.
time down because I think a baseball game I think is shorter than the NFL now, but I think it's shorter than an NBA game now.
I'd have to look into that. I don't know, but I do. I do like I do think that, it's everything is more niche now, almost everything. So you don't have to just, there's a wider pool to choose from. So people are going to choose from wider pools. And does that make wrestling more niche? Yeah. Does it make it harder to bring more people in? Yeah. We're not going to have the 90s boom happen again. Like,
No.
there's, it would take like Jesus returning and stepping into the ring to get those kinds of views
Well, and
onto it. It's
I think the other problem wrestling has and why it won't have like another boom period is there's aspects of wrestling the UFC just does better now.
the UFC kind of fills a niche that didn't used to exist. You know, there didn't used to be competition for wrestling as a genre in terms of live combat because all boxing was pay per view. You want to see boxing, you got to pay. You got to buy the pay per view,
or you got to get Showtime or HBO.
Yeah. And now with UFC is an option that's out there, and they were great by putting some stuff on, starting with the Ultimate Fighter. That got a lot of eyes on it, and that drew a lot of attention. And now,
and they got some of those guys, and I think the thing that really hurts wrestling with them though, is a lot of their fighters grew up wrestling fans, and they've learned to incorporate that into like hyping their fights.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what Muhammad Ali did. Muhammad Ali learned it from watching Gorgeous George. So, guess what? Creating emotion draws people in. Shocker, I know, but it's more and more fragmented, and more people wanting to get into it. So, is it more niche? Absolutely, but I don't think that that's a deviation on the norm. I think that's just kind of the general norm.
Well, I think wrestling's gotten progressively worse at being accommodating to newer fans.
Okay.
Because I think, like, I'll use WWE and AEW as an example. Like, I think they, in some ways, for like a new person, they're opposite ends of a spectrum that's too extreme. Because I think WWE doesn't give you enough wrestling. They baby you too much. They hammer you over the head with information too much. And I think to a new person, I think they're going to be like, well, this is stupid. They're treating me like a moron. But AEW, on the other hand, has a lot of wrestling, which I think is good. But sometimes, and I know we mock the video package thing, but sometimes AEW doesn't explain enough to you, and they don't give you enough of like, they give you a lot of the wrestling, but sometimes they don't give you enough of the bullshit that flavors wrestling as wrestling.
They kind of expect you, they're trusting their audience to have picked up to it, but I mean, they say it all the time. Who are they catering to? AEW's for the sickos, right? Like,
yeah.
They're aimed at people who kind of already know, or, well, not even or. I mean, that's their mindset. We're aimed at people who want to be wrestling fans, not as much sports entertainment fans, I guess.
I mean, it's just sad that like if someone said like, well, what should I watch to get into wrestling like that's current? I'd probably be like, okay, well, here's a Wrestle Universe subscription. We're gonna have you watch some DDT. We're gonna have you watch some Tokyo Joshi Pro and see what you think, and see if you like the nonsense. And it's a lighter touch. If you like that, we can go from there. But like, I don't even think I would give someone like, if I was a UFC fan, I'd honestly probably give them Stardom to start with.
I mean, I got two people into it by having them watch the last Wembley show with me. And they were drawn in by the people on the show. That's the thing that really got them. But it was the live performance aspect that really hooked them. So
I think, though, they had you to help them, though. And I think because of their situation, they had very disparate things that drew them. And I don't know if they were left to their own devices, if wrestling would pull them in without someone there to like.
It hadn't before. It's a funny comparison. You used to have to know somebody in wrestling in order to get into the business. Now you have to know somebody in the fandom to bring you into the business.
Yeah, because the one thing that was interesting to me when we talked to them was like, wow, they had very, very different things that drew them in, like almost counter in some ways to each other. And like I said, like they were very fortunate to have you that could like cater like knew how to cater their taste because like she had much more, I would say, of a bloodlust to her than he did.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
so
100%.
like and she's very into tag wrestling. Like she liked her blood. Like she's like if it was just her, I'd be like, okay, here's Memphis TV. Just go to town. You're gonna have a great time. But I don't think he would be as into that as her.
I very intentionally was going with, I'm like, tell me what seems interesting to you. And then I was trying to pull from the contemporary because that means that it's like, oh, and I can have new stuff of that now. That's why I pulled like the Briscoes FTR dog collar. I'm like, this is going to appeal for both of you.
Yeah.
Here you go. Hey, guess what? The FTR is still around. You know, Mark Briscoe's still around. That, and it's like, oh, they're still around. I can see, and that was my goal, is to say, this is stuff that I'm going to pitch stuff to you that you liked that is actively happening now and largely accessible. Then that way, that was my hook for keeping him in. I understand what you're saying, is you are going specifically at the wheelhouse of someone for what they're interested in. But what I was taking a different tact of trying to be like, now, if you're interested in this, this is something I think would be up your alley that's happening now, and then that would get them into it. And as you get into watching the current stuff, you pick up the storylines and kind of get in the flow.
And when I've done it before, I've been very careful to curate too and be like, okay, this is a good match, but we're gonna try and keep things under like 20 minutes for your first couple ones, then we'll get a little longer. But we're not gonna go for anything crazy like some, like. I think I don't get why WWE does that with their more casual fan base. Like, if someone was a couple shows in, I don't think I would give them like 30 to 40 minute main events like WWE does. Like, that's a lot for a new person, because I think I would give them I give them stuff like Ray and Eddie to watch, which is like 17 minutes, like Austin and Brett from 13, which I think is like, that's not super long. Like, so I typically go with stuff that's shorter, but I also think like the best matches, other than some of the All Japan stuff, is typically like on the shorter side. And when the longer it gets, like, I loved it, but like that's Saraya Utami match that we watched that I loved. I wouldn't have a new person watch that. That's too, there's too much nuance and it like a lot going on, and not necessarily a satisfying finish that I think if you're a fan of the promotion gets you ready for the rematch. But I think for like a new person, I wouldn't be like, no, you don't want to watch that. That is advanced watcher fare. But hey, we can watch the Stan Hansen Andre match. You'll like that.
Yeah.
Or even like I would show a new person the Choshu Killer Khan match we watched. I think that would be a pretty good new person fare, because Choshu has a very dynamic personality. It's not too long. It kind of gets over the face just giving it to the heel for 17 minutes or so. I don't know. I think it's just sad. Like, I don't think it's in a death knell like comics are. Like, comics made a lot of bad choices with their distribution model, their pricing, relying on gimmicks. I don't think wrestling's at that point. It just made me sad, like, that they got such a small rating, because I was like, damn, like, wrestling's just not anything really.
Comics is also still doing things that
they're actively hostile to new readers. Like,
well, not just that, they're hostile to the people that have been long-term fans too. I think I showed it to you guys, but they've been doing a storyline, I guess, recently with the Punisher, Frank Castle, that I won't even go to the details, but it basically you've ruined the character.
Well,
because one of his key motivations for the character, you've ruined it, and it's like, this is so long-term counterproductive. It's on the level. It's almost like you have like, obviously, you have decades of established Batman. Batman, one of the most popular superheroes, comic book characters of all time. It's like, what if you did a storyline now where it's like, Batman, his whole motivation for becoming Batman is, he saw his parents as a child die. What if you did a storyline where it's like you see, oh, his mom actually survived and just has been hidden for like years, throughout his entire childhood and everything. Now she approaches him as an adult man, or he finds her as an adult man. It's like, oh my God, mom, you're still alive. And she's like, oh, you're a little shit. I hated you. I don't want to be your mom. Like, I survived, so I just like want to go live my own life. I hated your father too. Fuck you. And it's like, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? And you'd be like, that's the level of what they did with the
Well,
Punisher in Marvel. And it's like, why are you greenlighting this? And it's because they probably hired some asshole who doesn't care about the character, whatever. And their idea is like, I'm gonna totally like new take and everything. And it's just you're someone that they're probably paying like $50, and you used to be a big Tumblr person back in the day, and you don't know anything, you don't care about the characters, etc. Like Marvel and DC kind of still does that shit.
well,
And it's all about content now, especially because Marvel's owned by Disney. They don't give a shit. It's all about content creation now.
and
It's like
keeping
create characters for us to put in movies and
and
TV
keeping
shows.
copyrights. Like Wonder Woman, they have to they have to keep publishing Wonder Woman, or her rights revert to the Marston estate. And I think like they're even having trouble holding on to bits of Superman, because I think Superboy, they have to license from the creators' estates now, because they lost parts of it. But like they also, the pricing's terrible. Like I think the average comic book now from Marvel and DC is like $5, and like Image is like notable because Image has kept a lot of it at like $3. That's like notable, which is sad.
I stopped collecting a long time ago, like over a decade, and when I finally like punched out, I think it was like where books were getting to be like,
Were you at the holding the
Three.
line at $2.99 that DC did for a while? Is that like when?
yeah,
when
I
you
think
punched out?
like it was like now, but everything's like $3. And sometimes like special issues, it was like $4 or $5. But they found ways to make like, oh, we need to do a special issue every other month or something like that. And I'm like, it
Yeah,
wasn't
that's-
always like
That special
e-
issue, that
let's
special double size is $10 now.
even like even if you're doing one book at $3 an issue, plus let's say they do an annual, okay, so you're paying like 36, maybe like $40 a year, which now comparatively it's like maybe that's not that much. But I wasn't just doing one book, I was doing like, let's say like 10 books, so it's like do the math, like $30 a month or more. It's like I couldn't justify it anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this amount. Like, so I dropped it. And I know now they have, you can get on Comixology or whatever, but it's like it's still not worth it to me.
It's
Like
the
it's
same
like,
price. If you wait a couple months, it drops down to $1.99. Or with DC, you can pay like $100 for a year, and you get the books a month after they come out, and you get the entire back catalog. Well, not the entire back
yeah,
catalog, but you get huge swaths of the back catalog. Or you can go over to Marvel and pay $75 for a year, get the back catalog, and their books hit 3 months afterwards. So for $175 a year, you can buy no books, not take up the space, not have to buy bags and boards. You get the books a little later, but you get the books. And then like, hey, you want to read like all 300 issues of Hellblazer? Well, there they are.
yeah. Well, full disclosure, I'm ragging on Marvel, but they had a special. So basically like Black Friday, a little bit after Black Friday, because I think I did it like December 1st, whatever. I signed up for a year of Marvel Unlimited, which is their service.
It's worth
Because
it.
they're doing a special where it's like get a year for like, I think it was like $45, and I'm like, I'll do it for that, like $45. Like I haven't even read really any new stuff. It's like I just want the back catalog. I'm gonna go read like Amazing Spider-Man from years ago.
I
Yeah.
I read
That's worth
Tomb
it
of
to me, like-
Dracula on there, and it was awesome.
Hmm.
From the 70s. I read most of the old stuff, but there's like, I mean, there's some years I read it more than others, but there's some years where I've knocked off like hundreds upon hundreds of issues and like knocked off like whole runs. So I think it's worth it, and like DC is worth it too. I mean, especially like for me, like because I probably read a couple books a week, And then I have my library card that gets me into Libby, and they have a ton of image trades for checkout. Like I've been reading Spawn from issue 1, and that's all on Libby. So I just check it out. You get it for 21 days. You can renew it. You send it back. You get the next one. You get the next, because Spawn has these big 50 issue trades that he made. Those are all on Libby, so it's all free just for having a library card. And like Walking Dead's on there. I think Invincible's on there. A bunch of image stuff's on there. Savage Dragon's on there.
Hmm. To bring it back to the topics of wrestling. I understand being disheartened by the number. Again, people who act like, oh, it's a great number. It's like, not really. Like, and even like apparent the worldwide number 5 million. It's like, we are not that far from the day when Raw would routinely get like 5 million easy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't mean like, oh, the great old days of like 20 years ago. It's like, no, like probably like a
10
decade
years ago, yeah.
Yeah. Now I in some respects, like the
I
world
think when
has
we
changed.
started the show, they were still doing like 3 million, and we were talking about like record low ratings on this show of like in the low
Yeah.
2 millions at some point.
Yeah.
Look, the world has changed. People fight with Dave Meltzer, and he, for his own amusement, fights with them too. But he does talk, and he can back it up with figures that year after year, like cable is losing viewers, and it's like it as a whole, it could be like death of 1,000 paper cuts, but someone like AEW, that it's not, when it first started, or like the first year or two, it could get like 1 million or 900,000 or so, and now it gets like 600,000 to 700,000, and people chicken little that, and I understand, yeah, it's declined, but and maybe it's declined a little more, but it's like, because cable is losing viewers year after year, then AEW getting 700 viewers today, 700,000, viewers today is probably, it's not that bad. Like comparatively, it's like, yeah, like maybe that's like it's ceiling now because less people are doing cable. Now, I guess that the question is, are they actually getting more now because people have moved to streaming? So then maybe they're getting 700,000 on cable because that's what the people who have cable, like me, I even just said, like, I DVR it from cable. I'm not watching it on Max. But maybe people who have like cut the cord for cable are like, oh shit, I got a Max account. Like, I'm watching on Max.
I'm glad I don't have to fill up the DVR with the shows anymore. I can just watch them.
But I brought all that up because like it is a little unfair, because people have moved away from just watching cable, and it's like, when it was, I would have to look up the figures, but when it was canceled effectively, like, what are the ratings of WCW Nitro
2.5
back in the day when it was?
They're in the,
was it 2.5?
2.5-ish. Yeah, they were still in the 2 millions. Like they would
WWE, obviously now they're on Netflix and they're crowing about 2.6 number. It's like, great, you're doing as well as like Nitro, which was dog shit, like numbers for the time period at the end. You're getting like the same level as they were like 20 plus years ago.
I think the last episode of Nitro maybe did like a 3.3 or something like that, like something that at the time, because I mean Raw at the time was doing like 6-7 million sometimes. Like I think what was it, that the Austin Taker rematch for the title in '99, I think, was like the peak of Raw ever, and I think that was like 10 something million.
Oh, okay. I know that Rock Mankind This Is Your Life was an 8.4 rating. But for some reason I had it lodged in my head that was the peak, but
I think that one where Austin beat Taker back for the title after Owen Hart died, I think it was right after that. I think that was like 10 something, because I think that was the one. Well, no, I think they beat Monday Night Football one time, in that era.
The point I was making, though, is that in fairness to them, it's a different time. And I brought up Meltzer saying that cable is losing viewers, and they are, but we are at a point in time right now that you can make arguments how like, oh, streaming's failing, whatever, like that. But there has never, part of the reason why you could get like insane ratings back in the day, it's because it's like there was cable and network TV. That was it. Now you don't have that. You still have cable TV, but you also have Netflix, you have Hulu, you have Disney Plus, you have Amazon Prime, you have Apple TV, you have Peacock, you have like Twitch, people watching people on Twitch,
Yeah.
like streaming video games and things like that. You have YouTube. People we're obviously on YouTube right now, like live.
Yeah.
But you have literally like a dozen different services that you could otherwise fill your time with. So everything is spread out. So at any given point, like if in theory it'd be like 10 million people could be watching my product, it's like, yeah, they could, but they also, the 10 million people you're kind of counting on are watching everything else or across like 12 different platforms. So
if you're going to say there's 10 million people with Netflix subscriptions, so we could have a potential audience of 10 million, it's like, dude, the people that are watching Hallmark Channel style movies on there are never going to click on Raw.
exactly, yeah.
But I also think
So-
people don't realize like Orange is the New Black. I don't have the viewing numbers on that, but I bet you people would be astonished at how few people actually watched that show.
Well, that show ended a few years ago, so it's
Yeah.
like when it was really popular and had buzz, maybe it did quite well, but
No, I bet you people would be
No,
shocked
bro.
at how few people like. I bet you if you saw the numbers for Stranger Things, I bet that'd be one of the more popular shows. But I bet you would still be shocked and be like, oh, wow, I expected quite a few more people to watch that.
it probably exists to an extent in a vacuum because, for example, like the first season of Last of Us, like I saw on social media tons of people talking about it, like, and talking in depth about the season, about each episode, whatever, to the point where it was a hit for HBO Max, and there was buzz, there was, I guess, like, what as they said, like water cooler talk about it, people talking about the show after each episode aired. But you look at the actual numbers, and it was probably like, I had to see, but it wasn't like
3
12 million
million.
people watched this. Yeah, like if that, 2-3 million, if that.
I'm gonna be honest.
So,
the last show I felt like had any cultural, like broad cultural appeal that I heard people in real life talk about. Like I could go anywhere and find someone that knew about the show was Game of Thrones. That's the last time I
Game of
feel like a
Thrones.
show
Yeah,
had
I'd
that
agree.
had that level of success.
I'd agree. I think there have been some shows which they've not remotely reached that level, but I think maybe have branched out a little bit.
Like I think
Last of Us,
Stranger Things, I think has
probably a little more.
I don't think Stranger Things got to that point as Game of Thrones, but I think like in the streaming era, like I think it's gotten about as close as you can get to like that
Yeah.
breaking through like that.
Yeah. But I will say this, like, even setting all this groundwork and this discussion, there are still wrestling fans who I think are completely in denial, maybe because they are so wrapped up in it. They're completely in denial at just how popular, and by that I mean unpopular, wrestling is with the general population. And by
Joey
that
Janela-
I mean, and
Joey Janela had a great take with the Costco guys because someone talked crap about them signing at a mall, and he said, "No, look at this. Like you send Roman Reigns there, they're just gonna think he's some jacked up like Samoan guy.
Yeah.
Like no one and he wasn't even ragging on WWE. He was just saying like no one in wrestling has this kind of pull anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And obviously, well, I think some people on social media were being disingenuous, like Twitter, they're being disingenuous with him because why? Because who have the Costco guys like appeared with? Oh, AEW. And AEW, I think probably Tony Khan has probably signed them to some sort of contract where, to the extent that they will do any sort of wrestling appearance stuff, it's with AEW. I think he must have signed them to some sort of like exclusivity deal. But the Costco guys like have millions of followers on TikTok and other places, and Joey Janela brought up a point, and it's true. And I like, this is what I'm getting at. Like, people have this concept in their mind, and some people really believe this. And it's like, I bring up the whole streaming thing and how there's multiple platforms and that things are fragmented now, and they are. And part of that's a little unfair to wrestling, I guess, because again, you're spread out so far. Whereas back in the day, it's like you really had, in the 80s, you had cable, but not as prevalent as you had in the 90s when you had cable, which was cable's a lot more powerful in the 90s.
I wish I could go back to the 80s and get a dish and just watch all that sweet, sweet wrestling that was on.
Yeah. But point is, back in the day, it's like, yeah, like culturally, someone like Hulk Hogan was a much bigger deal. In the late 90s, someone like Steve Austin or The Rock, much bigger deal than stars
like in the but before that though, like your local guy was a bigger deal. Like Vern Gagne in Chicago. Like there's that video I laugh at all the time that I send you guys because I'm an idiot. The one of the mattress commercial where Boris Malenko is wrestling a giant mattress. Like,
yeah,
but like your local like Junkyard Dog and like Mid-South.
Regional Von Erichs with Pizza Hut, or was it Pizza Hut?
No, it was like a local chain.
Pizza something.
Pizza Village or something like that.
Would people in Boston, Massachusetts, be like going crazy for the Von Erichs? No. Good.
Well, no,
Von Erichs, like they probably couldn't walk down the street in like Dallas without people mobbing them.
That's not true, because the Von Erichs, because World Class was like the first show that got like syndicated. It's because like, remember our friend Chris is a big Von Erichs fan because it got syndicated there. So like, they would be a weird one because they were probably like the first real big national stars because of that. Because there's an interesting thing if you listen to Laps Fan where they got on the Christian Broadcast Network. That's how they got syndicated. But the other reason is when you watch their TV, compared to TV in that era, they were getting something astronomical like $20,000 in 1980s money to do their TV production. And all these other shows were in the studio, and they're out there doing like, you watch like 82, 83 World Class, they're doing like multi-camera shoots, like everyone else is like in a TV studio.
By the way, the answer was Pizza Inn.
Pizza Inn. Okay, I knew it was a pizza thing.
I said Pizza Village. I was pretty close.
But
those commercials are funny. I don't know.
But I want to go back to the Joey Janela point, because again, I think people were disingenuous because on some level, there are some people who realize like the Costco guys are big, and they're bitter that they are like, on AEW television because they bring viewers, they potentially would bring viewers, or just in general, like they bring hype or attention to AEW, when it's like, oh, this should be WWE, which is a very cynical, like, where it's like, just because
I think it goes
WWE is
deeper
the
than
biggest
that,
company,
though.
that's who only people should associate with. But
I think it's deeper than that, though, because I think some of it is like, it's a lot of older wrestling fans that they don't like, they're not up on that stuff. So it's also the fact that those guys in general are bigger than wrestling, like, as far as their following. And I think it's,
but to that point, it's like, this is what and I've argued about this recently with people too, but it really does go towards how things have diminished and it has become more of a niche hobby.
Oh God, I'm sorry, I just had a memory trigger. Here's how good the Costco guys' penetration is. My kids very rarely watch wrestling with me. We don't just let them watch whatever on YouTube. Like, we curate what they watch, right?
Oh yeah.
One of my oldest kid came over to me the other day. He went, "Hey, Daddy," and I went, "What?" And he went and walked away. And I was like, "You just did the Rizzler thing?" And I went, "Where did you see that?" And he went, "I don't know, some video," and walked off. And I was like, "The hell?" So like he's not saying jumping back and forth like Jey Uso going yeet yeet yeet. He's not doing any of that. I'm like, but he did the Rizzler thing, and I was like, what? It just took me so off guard.
Yeah. What I'm getting at though is that I'm trying to like be fair in that things are so fragmented now and things have shrunk. So maybe it's not entirely on wrestling or the wrestling stars, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still people who are in denial about things, and they shouldn't be, but they are. But if you took the 80s, the mid to late 80s, and you plopped Hulk Hogan in Times Square, Hulk Hogan would draw a crowd and people would be like, oh my God, it's Hulk Hogan. They would know who he is and they would crowd around him. If in the late 90s, you took Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock and you dropped him in Times Square, people would be like, oh my God, like, would you get as much as Hogan in the 80s? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, wrestling was pretty hot in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean,
if you
to
took
be honest
the
with you,
2000s, yeah,
to be honest with you, yeah, you probably could with Rock or Austin.
Yeah, if you took like the 2000 John Cena, dropped him in Times Square, would you get as big of a reaction as Hogan or Austin Rock? No, but you actually might get some people. Nowadays, if you dropped Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in Times Square, I don't know, do you get a single fucking person to be like, oh my God, like you're that guy? Like they wouldn't. I don't think they would. I honestly don't believe they would get bothered.
Cody might get one
I don't
or
think
two.
people would think, maybe, but I mean, like, I don't think that they would.
I would
but
say
if you dropped the Costco guys in Times Square, you would have people flocking to them like, oh my God, I saw your videos. TikTok, dude.
Actually,
they would.
Roman might get like 2 or 3 people asking if he's Jason Momoa.
So, like,
there
to put it in scale, Hogan might draw 100 people. Rock and Austin might 80 to 100. Costco guys, I don't know, maybe in that range. But Cody, Roman, and here, we'll just go with Cody, Roman, Swerve, Hangman, Mox, maybe 5 instead of 100. Like, that'd be about where my bet falls. Costco guys, I don't know, man. I don't have enough of a grasp on them. I have an idea.
I actually think out of that group, Swerve might do the best, but it wouldn't be wrestling fans. It wouldn't be wrestling fans for Swerve.
Swerve, that's a whole separate discussion for another day, perhaps. But Swerve has the potential to be like I mean, he elevated himself in 2024, obviously, to the main event level, but he has the possibility of being a crossover star only because he will go to outside outlets and he presents himself as a star. He comes off as a star. He has a ton of charisma. He can just there are certain aspects to being a top guy or a franchise guy or the guy that you want as your ace potentially. And we talked about this before, but it's more that there's many things. We at the beginning of this podcast we talked about, like Roman couldn't do this; it would kill his aura or whatever. But it's also like, does Roman even have like the skills that someone like Swerve does in terms of like handling the media? Like, I don't think he does. Like, you could argue like he has some skills, but he couldn't. Like, I've heard Swerve give interviews on like radio shows or whatever like that, and it's seamless. It's like the dude has that skill set, and it's a skill set. Like, if not everyone can be interviewed about something and come off as like funny, personable. I agree with Brad when he's talking earlier. It's like, could Cody do that? Yeah, Cody could do that.
Yeah,
like, I absolutely believe you could put Cody like remember back in the day, you get here's the Ultimate Warrior going to be on Regis Philbin, Kathy Lee back in the day. And it's like, I don't know, Ultimate Warrior is a bad example, perhaps. But I mean,
Savage on Good Morning America.
yeah, Macho Man could do it because he's like, a dynamic personality, whatever, like that.
Yo,
Swerve could easily
you're
go on
off for
something
a
like that.
second. Yeah.
Swerve could go on like Good Morning America.
Yeah.
Cody could go on Good Morning America.
If you dropped honestly, if you were gonna drop anybody on something like Jimmy Fallon or Kimmel or something like that, I think your top bets would probably be in their respective companies. Probably be Swerve and Cody.
Yeah, that would be. I wanted to add.
I mean, as much as I'm a Hangman guy, probably Swerve and Cody.
I wanted to add to your Times Square thing just to put it in perspective. I think if you put all those guys from AEW and WWE in Times Square, and then you put Beetlejuice from Howard Stern out there, Beetlejuice would outdraw all of them combined.
Maybe so. Maybe because I mean, years later, I mean, Stern was shouted out on Letterkenny, which was not a huge but a Canadian TV show, and they're like, oh yeah, if it's on Stern, it's got to be right. And it's like, and I was like, you're doing that. I would not have expected these guys to be Stern fans, I guess.
But you still see random corners of the internet. Beetlejuice comes up in like random like posts and all sorts of stuff, like quite a bit. Like you'd be shocked how much like Beetlejuice pops up. I wonder if he's still. I think he's still alive. 99%.
I don't know.
Is he?
I think so.
Y'all gonna make me look this up now.
Because I think I looked recently because I didn't believe he was alive, and I think he was.
He's still alive.
How old is he?
56.
He's only 56.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think he's done quite a bit of movies and stuff now, though. I think he's parlayed some of that into like financial success. Famously got a guitar shot from Jeff Jarrett in WCW.
I remember that. It was such a weird thing to have pop up. Anybody who compares anything happening right now to the worst days of WCW very clearly did not watch the worst days of WCW.
The worst. We should. Brian and I can't think of his other name. Brian and Vinny did it. Vinny did it recently, and like it's abysmal.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I don't remember what it was. I just remember. I still have the scars.
Like just like the stupid like Misfits in Action stuff. And like the Mike Awesome, I still remember that is Mike Awesome power bombing. Yeah, but I was gonna say when he power bombed it was Shaggy Two Dope, I think, on the bus, and he slid off the side, and he tried to save him, and he just like kersplatted.
Ate dirt.
I don't remember. Do you remember what went wrong with that? Did he just do it wrong, or because he started sliding and like Mike Awesome tried to like save it, like grab him, and he just was. He just
hit, and he wasn't directly on the middle of the bus, which it wasn't a great spot to do anyway.
No, it was dumb.
But
I was just actually watching stuff with the one WCW stable I really liked that never went anywhere because Raven quit, but the Deadpool I thought was an interesting little.
I don't really remember that one.
So they were like in the summer of '99. So it was ICP, Raven, and Vampiro. It was right before Raven
I
quit.
vaguely remember that, but man, that's a. Ooh, that is a.
It was like a couple weeks and then Raven decided to quit.
Yeah. So.
Okay,
I think we about wound down now, aren't we?
Yeah. But that so I thought
started talking about Beetlejuice from Howard Stern.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was an interesting discussion to have though, because like I said, I saw those numbers. I'm like, ooh, like
yeah,
that is not like great for wrestling. But so we'll be back next week. I don't know what we're doing. I think we might be able to watch USWA for next week.
Maybe.
I have Monday off. I think Matt has Monday off, so we might have a little extra time. Do you have Monday off, Shaq?
Maybe. I do, but I also have a project on this 3-day weekend, so
Ah, okay. Well, we'll figure something out.
yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us as always. We appreciate your support and viewing hours, and I'm very tired, but this has been Matt, Shad, and Brad. We've been in 3 corners because the creepy bear with the microphone doesn't count, and you've been in the 4th. So thank you for watching as always, and we will catch you next time.